Previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
This group of bullies eats the principal. Quick update just to say that I've completely lied to you in the first video, unfortunately, when I said this would only be 3 parts, because I ended up talking about season 2 for far much longer than I thought that I would, and I can only imagine how it's going to be from here on out. So I think I'm actually going to do 1 season per video. This video will only be season 2, and it's already long enough, so enjoy.
People don't know anything about vampires. What they are, how they live, how they dress.
The season 2 premiere of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, titled When She Was Bad, picks off just basically a few short months after the events of the season 1 finale, because summer break has passed and it's been around a few months, maybe 2, 3. Throughout that entire time, Buffy has been staying presumably in Los Angeles with her father. I do want to introduce one of our new main characters, which I feel like should have been a given, which is David Boreanaz. I think that's how you say his last name, I hope. He now becomes a main character with the character of Angel. You basically already got to meet him in season 1, so I feel like you kind of know his character, and you're only going to learn more of it in this season and the next. He has had a very sketchy, rocky past before his time meeting Buffy, and in this season like I said, you'll see more about that. But he's also a very compassionate person, a very nice person, and he's clearly like the main love interest for Buffy up to this point. So it's been a slow summer, and the episode starts with Willow and Xander kind of going like on a patrol. There seems to be some kind of romantic chemistry between the two for this one little sweet moment, and then Buffy comes and the moment is broken, and Xander starts acting like the asshole that he is to his core in season 2 / kind of season 1. I did put a note here that last season when I was discussing Prophecy Girl, I did fail to mention this really loser moment that Xander had, where he did the right thing, in my opinion, and he told Buffy how he felt about her straight up and like asked her out on a date, and she rejected him as she should, as she deserved to. But he was kind of a loser with the news. Like, he started acting all very like white knight, like nice guy towards her after she rejected him, and that's exactly what you would expect from him. But I bring that up only because it will come back in this episode, as you will see. Right from the beginning, basically, as soon as we see Buffy again in season 2, we can tell that she is different. She seems to be normal enough with Xander and with Willow as soon as we see her again, but there's like this moment, for example, where Willow is asking her, like, have you gone to see Giles yet, being as he is a huge figure in your life, basically a father figure. Buffy, for some reason, is so rude, and she's like, why would I do that? Like, what do you mean, why would you do that? Like, don't be a rude person. Same when her father is, like, I guess, unpacking her suitcase or whatever with Joyce. He also says that Buffy was very different this summer. He basically says that she felt very distant, like very cold. Like, she was there, but she also wasn't there. And that leads us into the first day of school back. There is a cute little sweet moment between Jenny and Giles, sort of picking up on some of the romantic tension they had at the end of season 1. As we continue and progress through the first day of school, Buffy just seems to have a lot of like anxiety and a lot of anger still inside of her about the events that transpired at the end of last season, specifically with the Master. You can see she still has a lot of clear anxiety about the Master. She even has a nightmare in the episode that the Master has come back. I'll talk more about Buffy's dreams later in this season. Her dreams usually are sort of important, so remember that. And she actually wakes up from one of her bad dreams, and Angel is there, creeping, lurking by her window, as centuries-old vampires tend to do. We've all seen Twilight. Buffy is like very cold towards him. It's really a pleasure to see. He clearly is trying to kind of reach out to her, and she's not giving him the time of day, because she's really, quite frankly, not giving anyone the time of day right now. And then I wrote a note in here that Buffy's outfit at 16 minutes and 40 seconds, which I will show right now, is super cute. It's very like grown-up, mature Buffy, I think. So it seems like the vampires, specifically the Anointed one, if you remember, who was that little kid from the end of the first season, commentary on him in a little bit. He has been trying to gather forces to, I don't know, I guess bring the master back. During the summer break when Buffy wasn't there, Willow, Xander, and Giles did bury the bones of the master. So I guess that the vampires found a way to bring him back. So they steal his bones, which Buffy will find out about that right now. Because we cut to a scene at the Bronze, because of course, where Buffy comes and she is just on full bad bitch mode. So first and foremost, I just want to say that her black mini dress that she wears during this scene at the Bronze, which I will be displaying on the scene, is literally so gorgeous. It's literally goals, the entire outfit. I actually bought a black mini dress myself recently to kind of be an homage to the look, so fingers crossed for me, please. Angel comes up to Buffy and she's once again cold to him, as she should be, but then she does arguably one of the shittiest things she ever does, I feel like, in this whole show. Definitely in this season, I would say it's the shittiest thing, which is that she takes Xander and dances with him. And this is shitty on like multiple levels, and I'll tell you why. On one end, and I would say probably on the lowest end, because who the hell cares, it upsets Angel. She's clearly only doing it to make Angel jealous, at least in a way. Meanwhile, Willow is also there, and remember, Willow has a huge crush on Xander, of which Buffy definitely knows. Like, she's not stupid. So that's hurting her best friend as well. And then on the top layer, if you will, is the fact that she's leading Xander on. That's why I mentioned what happened at the end of Prophecy, or beginning of Prophecy Girl technically, where Buffy rejected Xander. She knows very well about his feelings for her, and she does not reciprocate, but in this moment she is doing this to piss Angel off, which is also making Willow upset, and it's also shitty towards Xander, because of course he's going to accept this attention from a girl he likes. And then she says one of the shittiest things, which if I'm able to play a clip without getting copyrighted, I fully intend to.
Bye, little Xander. Did I ever thank you for saving my life?
No.
Don't you wish I would?
Then Buffy ends up like walking out of the Bronze, and Cordelia, who's actually been visibly nicer a little bit in this episode. There were some scenes, like at that one scene or so earlier, where she's been visibly more talkative towards the Scooby Gang. Cordelia comes and is telling Buffy, like, are you trying out for Bitch of the Year? Like, what's going on, you know? And then they kind of have a little conversation. Buffy walks away, and this is actually also when Buffy finds out, because she goes to visit the Master's grave, she finds out that the bones have been taken. Likewise, at the same time, Cordelia is kidnapped by this mysterious figure, clearly a vampire, and we follow Cordelia and we find out that whatever reason she was kidnapped for, apparently Mrs. Calendar, Jenny Calendar, was also kidnapped, and they're both there together. Then we cut to the next day, and I repeat, Buffy has found out that the Master's bones have been stolen. So she confronts Giles in front of Willow and Xander, and she's basically telling him, why wouldn't you tell me that bringing him back to life was a possibility? She kind of goes off on him, and she then goes off on Willow, and honestly in this scene, Xander kind of slays for a moment because he stands up for Willow finally. Later that day, they're in the library or something, and they end up getting like a ransom note saying that she has to go to the Bronze in order to get Cordelia back. Buffy is then rude once again to her friends. She tells them, you're not gonna come with me, I'm gonna go alone, you're just gonna be holding me back if you come. They're just like, don't be this way, and then she is that way. She leaves. She ends up running into Angel, who kind of helps her out when she's in the bronze, helps her out, but turns out he doesn't really have to help her out for much because it was actually a trap, and I'm going to explain that now. So the entire trap was that they actually needed to get Willow and Giles. And the reason for that is because there is this, I don't know, prophecy. There's prophecies all over this show where in order to bring someone back, you have to get the blood, I believe, of someone who is close to them. So if you hear that, you're just like, oh, well, you know, Buffy's like, I was close to him. I was like his biggest enemy. He was my biggest enemy. We were really close. So he definitely needs my blood. But in reality, the blood that they needed was the blood of those who were literally close to the master when he died. And in season 1, when he died in the library. He fell from like the roof, and the people who were physically closest to the master when he died, if you remember, would be Willow, Jenny Calendar, Mr. Giles, and then Cordelia, because those 4 were the ones in the library. Xander, if you remember as well, he ends up not getting kidnapped because he did not stay behind with the rest of the people in the library at the end of season 1. He actually went with Angel to save Buffy. Xander once again has a little bit of a slaying moment when he tells Buffy off once again after Willow and Giles have been kidnapped, and he tells her that if anything happens to Willow, he'll kill her himself. Empty promises, empty threats, but nice thoughts nonetheless. They end up going and saving everybody, of course. Buffy saves the day. After everyone has been saved, the master's bones are on this table, and Buffy finally gets to take her frustrations out that she's had this entire episode, and quite frankly this entire summer. She's finally able to take it out on the person who actually deserves it, which is the master, not her friends and people who are important to her. So she takes this hammer and just smashes into the master's bones while her friends watch in this moment of like realization and acceptance. And Angel hugs her. It's a sweet moment, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm an Angel hater, but I'm not a total Angel hater. I have my moments, I have a heart. And the next day at school, she's back to normal, right? There's this really sweet moment as well where she goes into class and she's worried that her friends maybe won't forgive her for how she's been acting towards them, but then they just accept her again like it's nothing. The episode ends with us also finding out that the Anointed One is still alive, but literally, like, who fucking cares? Then we cut to the next batch of episodes. So Some Assembly Required is kind of our filler episode before we get to episode 3, which really introduces plot for us. So Some Assembly Required, I'm not going to talk about it much. I actually don't hate this episode. Like, I don't. It's not going to be on the bottom of my ranking list. But basically, this is like a Frankenstein episode where there are these 2 creepy guys in the school, and they are they're grave robbing body parts from girls who died in the area of Sunnydale, because apparently there was like this car crash that killed like 5 girls or something. So they basically stole those bodies, and they're using body parts to make this perfect woman. And that's because one of the guy's brother died like a year or 2 ago, and he brought him back to life as like this Frankenstein monster, even though technically Frankenstein is the doctor, not the monster, but you know what I'm saying. So he brings him back to life, and then in Frankenstein style, he wants a companion, he wants love, so he's like, let me make the perfect girl for you. They end up kidnapping Cordelia, which is now the 2nd time that Cordelia is kidnapped in season 2 already. At the end of the day, of course, Buffy saves the day. You do see a bit more of Buffy and Angel spending time in this episode, which is very clearly setting up more of a Buffy and Angel like canon relationship come season 2. There is also a very sweet B-plot in this episode where Giles is trying to ask Jenny out on a date, and he's failing miserably because he's Giles. I love him. Jenny, on the other hand, is very smooth, perhaps too smooth, some would say. It's like it's unrealistic, let's put it that way. She's very smooth, and she ends up asking him out on a date, and while they're trying to go on this date to this football game, which was her idea, because of course it was, Willow and Xander come and just cock block and ruin the moment. It's like, please read a room for once in your life, children. And then we follow that with season 2, episode 3, titled School hard. It is parent-teacher night at Sunnydale. And so Principal Snyder, who hates children, put a pin on that for eventually. He hates children and he really hates Buffy. He is out to get her, okay? And so he pairs her up with this other troubled girl in school, and he puts them in charge of taking care of student-teacher conference night. And I just don't know if that's like logistically the best idea, but that's what he does. And thankfully Buffy isn't actually a bad student. Buffy does not want her mom to go. She does not want her mom to even meet Principal Snyder or meet any of her teachers. But anyways, the reason that I am like grinning over here, so it's parent-teacher night, super fun, super cool, but then after 14, or at least what felt like 14 very long episodes on this show, we finally get introduced to our villain for the first half of season 2. His name is Spike. I'm not gonna say too much. Just remember the name. He will be coming back and back and back. He is one of the characters who will be staying for the long term. We find out that he is gonna be working alongside the Anointed One because he has in the past killed a few Slayers. I believe he's killed 2 Slayers in his lifetime, and he gets a hard-on for it. He has a bit of a hard-on for killing Slayers, you know. Everyone has their kink, who am I to judge? And he's talking to the Anointed One, like joining forces. At that moment, his boo thing, who sadly is not me, but her name is Drusilla, Drew for short, she pops in, and immediately we are getting a different kind of vampire in season 2. I feel all of the vampires in season 1 were just evil, evil, evil. With Spike and Drew, we finally see a shift there that I think will continue as we get more complex villains and more complex vampires as the show goes on. Spike and Drew are human beings in a way. They have a bit of humanity to them. Put a pin in that. They are in love with each other. Immediately as Drew is introduced, we see Spike go from this badass vampire that he is to a bit of a softer version of him because he cares so much for her, and we see their love together, and quite honestly they're fucking couple goals. They are what I aim to be at all moments, all of the time. They're absolutely phenomenal, those two. Later on in the episode, there is a moment where Spike is sort of watching Buffy, not in like a weird angel kind of way, but more so in a scoping out the enemy sort of way. And he's trying to get a good grasp of how she is and I guess the best way to kill her. And then he's so polite that he even tells her, he's like, I'm gonna kill you on Saturday. That's so considerate of him, I think. He decides he's gonna kill her on Saturday because on Saturday there's this, for some reason, I literally put in my notes, for some stupid fucking reason, this Saturday and this weekend, the vampires in Sunnydale are going to be very strong. Don't bother asking why or how. Don't bother, because I will not answer that for you, and I don't really think the show cares for it either. So the vampires are going to be really strong this weekend, so that's why Spike plans to kill her on Saturday. Like I said, very considerate. He's even going to kill her after her student-teacher conference on Friday, so just very considerate guy all around. We end up finding out as the gang is preparing to potentially find out more about Spike, which is when they find out that he's killed Slayers before and that his nickname is William the Bloody. That's kind of badass, if you ask me. That's kind of badass. We also find out that Spike has a history with Angel, wherein Angel was Spike's sire. Super fun stuff. Just quirky little girly things. So the gang is prepping. Cordelia's even there, which is really nice. They're sharpening their wooden stakes. Just normal parent-teacher conference activities. The parent-teacher conference happens. Of course, Spike is not a man of his word, but he also is a man of his word. We'll come back to that. But he's not a man of his word, and he ends up attacking earlier on Friday because, as he quote-unquote says, he was impatient. He wanted to get it over with. He steals some of the Anointed One's vampire goonies, I suppose, to undertake this. And in a really stupid move, really, if you think about it. No offense to Spike, but in a really stupid move, he attacks in this very public area where all of these parents and teachers and students are. Whatever. Buffy ends up fighting him, and Spike almost kind of has the moment where he could kill her when out of nowhere Joyce comes and saves the day. She knocks him out with an axe, I believe, or something of the sort, and he ends up running away. Very funny. A lot of his vamps are now dead, but they're not really his vamps, they're the Anointed One's vamps. So Drew tells Spike, she's like, you should apologize to this little fucking kid, to the Anointed One, because you killed a bunch of his men after you got impatient and wanted to attack, and he didn't really approve of that. And Spike goes and he starts to apologize, but then the script flips because Spike is like, what the fuck am I joking about? I'm not sorry. If I had the chance to do it again, I would. I really fucking would. And then he just straight up kills the Anointed One. Straight up kills him, and I laughed. Not because it was child murder. That was just a part of it. But also because the Anointed One was just such a non-starter from the beginning. You can't do anything with it. It's so non-threatening. It would have been such a weak season if that was really our villain. So I love Buffy just completely getting rid of the stereotype there. Completely breaking it and being like, oh yes, the Anointed One was the super dangerous one in season 1. But that was last season and that's this season now, bitch. So he's dead. I laughed. I enjoyed it. I did. A quick note that I wrote here, and I want you guys to put a pin on it. I'm gonna be saying that a lot this season. Take a shot every time I say put a pin on it. We find out when after the parent-teacher conference is over and the vamps have retreated, Principal Snyder was acting this whole episode like those vampires were hoodlums in a gang on PCP, because why not? But we do find out at the end when the police come, we see Principal Snyder talking to the police force, and they acknowledge that it was vampires. And once again, they're like, so what's our cover gonna be? PCP. Which shows that as clueless as the adults of Sunnydale might seem, they're actually not that clueless. And especially those people like the principal, the police, potentially even other important governmental figures. I don't think there's so much complicit in it, as much as just like, how the fuck are you gonna explain that vampires attacked the school? Season 2, episode 4 is titled Inca Mummy Girl. It's basically the obligatory foreign exchange student episode. My school never had that. Nobody's school that like around here had that. If your school had that, please let me know. Is that a thing people do? I don't know. It was on Tall Girl as well, like, and that was recent. Are people doing that? I don't know. Buffy got assigned this South American guy. Why not? At the same time, their school is also going on a field trip to a museum with a mummy. It's this Incan princess who was sacrificed by her people. Who fucking cares? The Incan mummy princess has the possibility of kissing men to the point of their life transferring to her. So these men become mummified while she gets to then live on as a normal teenage girl. She ends up, of course, kissing the South American foreign exchange student. Since she's an Incan princess, she's presumably Latin, Hispanic, whatever. She's a fellow Latina. She pretends to be Buffy's foreign exchange student, and Buffy just totally accepts this. She's like, I thought it was a guy, but I guess it was a miscommunication. This girl ends up forming a bit of a connection with Xander, which makes Willow jealous. Who fucking cares? I really don't. We also finally get introduced to the character of Oz. Cordelia is kind of hanging out with / dating, but I guess not for long because she's dating someone else in the next episode, whatever. But she's kind of seeing this guy who's in a band, and in the band with that guy is Oz, who is played by Seth Green, and I love him so much. He gets introduced. Remember him, because I will be bringing him up quite a bit this season. Later on in the episode, there is this dance at the Bronze, and it's a school-sponsored cultural event dance at the Bronze. I can never not emphasize these school-sponsored events at this all-ages club in the bad side of town. I'm never gonna get over it, and why should I? You shouldn't either. It's a cultural dance, and of course, everyone's there. Uncle Mummy's there with Xander. Willow is wearing this adorable Eskimo cultural appropriation little coat. I know she is burning up. It is literally California and presumably September. Like, be a little bit real. But Oz is there in the stage performing, and he happens to look at Willow, and he's just like, he has this moment, and he's like, who's that girl? And we are so close. We are so close to being out of the trenches, and I cannot wait. Besides this, really the episode just ends with Buffy saving the day. You never would have guessed it. The Ink and Mummy Princess goes back to being dead. One interesting aspect, I suppose, is pretty nice on a pretty surface level kind of way, is that there's a lot of parallels between the Ink and Mummy Princess and between Buffy, because if you think about it, the Ink and Mummy Princess, she was sacrificed by her people. She didn't really choose that life. It was chosen for her, and she had to die for their well-being. And is that not what Buffy kind of literally did last season? Buffy had a little bit more free will and free choice over it than the Ink and Mummy Princess, which makes it even worse and really makes you feel her circumstance. And it makes you almost completely understand why she's doing what she's doing, but she is still killing guys. So then we cut to episode 5, Reptile Boy. It's another Monster of the Week episode, guys, but this one is a little bit better. The episode starts, and like I mentioned, Cordelia, even though she was quite literally seeing that guy in the band in the last episode, she is now hanging out with this college guy. Buffy and Cordelia are presumably the same grade, same age, as they both graduate high school together in the next season, right? They also, because they graduate next year, and the first 3 seasons are a year in the life, very Gilmore Girls, you know? They're presumably juniors. They're juniors. Meanwhile, the guy that Cordelia is dating is in college, and that's not even the worst part. Like, he could be a freshman in college, a sophomore, and that's pushing it, but he is a senior in college dating this junior who's like 16. She just learned how to drive in the last season, okay? This junior in high school. So I need these grown men to step away from these teenage minors, but that's neither here nor there. One of the guys that Cordelia, well, not one of the guys, the guy that Cordelia is seeing, one of his frat brothers, because of course he's a frat guy, one of his frat brothers catches like a bit of an interest to Buffy. He's like a nice guy. Those don't exist. Be a little serious. After these guys invite the girls to this party, which at first Buffy refuses, but then Angel is like uncommunicative to her, so she's like, fine, fuck it, I'm going out, ho. They end up going to this frat party where they get drugged. Yeah. Cordelia and Xander get drugged. Not Cordelia and Xander, oh my god. Cordelia and Buffy get drugged. Not because these guys are gonna rape them, although there is a scene that does indicate that one of the guys did want to rape Buffy, so very side eye. But they're not drugging them because they want to rape them. No. They're drugging them because every year, I believe, is it every year or is it every few years? I don't remember exactly. It wasn't important enough. But either every year or every few years, the boys in this fraternity, they need to sacrifice 3 girls exactly to their reptilian god creature, their creature from the Black Lagoon that lives underneath their frat house naturally. Because if they feed this reptilian god, then they themselves will be rich. And their family have been doing it for generations, which is why they come from generational wealth, because generationally they've been feeding this reptilian god monster. Of course, Buffy ends up saving the day, although to be fair, Willow and Giles and Xander and Angel also save the day. They come and help, because another plot that's been happening in this episode, besides Buffy and Angel's being annoying, and the whole reptilian fraternity is the fact that Giles has been riding Buffy pretty hard to focus in on her training because he wants her to be prepped. She has been feeling a lot of pressure because on one end, Giles is giving her so much pressure to be a better Slayer, to train better when she just wants to live a normal life. And then Angel, who's the guy she likes, is like not being like normal boyfriend material. So it's just been all around stressful for her. And there's actually this really funny moment that I really laughed, where Willow ends up telling off Giles and Angel in the funniest way. She basically tells Giles, you've been super strict on her, not letting her do anything. And then she turns to Angel and she's just like, and you're gonna live forever. You can't take one night out for a cup of coffee. And when I tell you, my good sister, I laughed at that. I laughed so hard at that. Allison Hannigan's acting is so good. It is so on par every time. This then leads us into episode 6. I actually mentioned episode 6 very briefly in my first part of this video when I was talking about season 1, and I was talking about the episode Nightmares, and I was saying that there were other episodes in Buffy that did the concept for nightmares better than Nightmares. This is one of them. So this episode introduces some really great concepts. So on one end, we have Buffy not feeling like she can be a normal teenage girl, which is not necessarily a new concept. So it's not really like an introduction to it. This episode is more focused on her not being able to be a normal girl within dating. She can't even be a normal girl even when she's literally dating a vampire. She always has that insecurity to her. This episode also introduces the concept of Xander not feeling like he's manly enough, which is already miles ahead of the Nightmares clown phobia. And then there is, with Willow, it's kind of, I'm a little bit confused about it, but I'm also not. So in this episode, Willow's insecurity almost seems to be that she doesn't want to be perceived, which I feel is very relatable. It seems like she almost wants to be invisible, but the reasoning for that, I suppose, it depends on how you want to see it. Either she wants to not be perceived truly, she wants to be invisible, or she already feels like she's invisible because maybe the guys she likes don't notice her. So then that adds to her insecurity, and then it makes her equally not want to be perceived. Throughout this episode, we see them in different moments. With Buffy, we see it with her insecurity with Angel's relationship. She feels like Angel might have been used to dating a certain type of dainty woman in his past because he would have been a teenager in like the 1800s, super romantic. We see it with Xander because there is a moment where he is trying to stick up for himself to this really mean bully called Larry. Please remember Larry. Buffy ends up standing up for him, which kind of embarrasses him. He's like, that's the worst thing you could have done. I was supposed, even if I lost and got my ass beaten, I was supposed to take it like a man, not have my girlfriend, you know, my friend who's a girl, defend me. So we have all of those base insecurities introduced, right? And it's Halloween. Principal Snyder has voluntarily signed up most of our gang to participate in this volunteer trick-or-treat where I guess the high school kids take a group of elementary, middle school kids and they take them trick-or-treating. Like, where the fuck are your parents? My mom would never allow that. Also, that just sounds like a bad idea. Like, if you're a high schooler, the last thing I'm thinking about is looking after these little kids. And there's this new Halloween costume shop that opens up in town, run by this man called Ethan. I wonder if he'll be important. Everyone kind of end up picking a costume. Xander ends up picking this military army costume. Willow picks this ghost costume. And then Buffy finds this really pretty, like, Victorian era looking gown for her costume. Halloween rolls around, everyone's dressed up, and we go full on Halloween Town 2 Calabar's Revenge in this shit because everyone ends up becoming their costumes. Willow ends up becoming a ghost, and when you see her again, she's not in her ghost costume, which is just a piece of white sheet basically. No. Instead, she is walking around with whatever she was wearing underneath the sheet when she died. And then, just for context, Buffy did try to sex up Willow a little bit and dress her up a little bit more Halloween-y, you know, like Mean Girls Halloween. Willow didn't feel comfortable in that. So she didn't necessarily take it off, she just ended up putting the ghost costume on top of her. But that means that when she died, technically, when she becomes a ghost, because she ends up becoming the costume, what she ends up walking around in later on isn't the ghost costume. Instead, she's walking around in the Spice Girls wannabe looking outfit. So now Willow has no choice but to truly be perceived, which is the point, obviously. Xander ends up becoming like a real military guy, which I do actually like, because then you get to see a different side of Xander. But also, it's not stupid shit that never comes back. We actually see Xander's army costume in this military costume, whatever. We see it come back in this season, and even I would say later on in the show we see it come back. So it's kind of funny to me. And then Buffy is this frail Victorian woman now, very Timothée Chalamet. She has no defense for herself. She's not strong. She's not the Slayer. She's just a helpless woman, which is kind of what she wanted to be. To each their own, girl. I don't know. However, because Buffy is now this frail woman, Spike ends up finding out, and he's like, oh, perf, opportunity to kill the Slayer, deuces ho. He goes after her. Everyone's trying to find a way to protect Buffy and kill Spike, and also just defend the town because shit's going haywire all around. As the episode progresses, we end up kind of coming to the realization that the only people who became their costumes were the people who bought from this one store, because we find out that Cordelia, she dressed up as a cat from this like basically Spirit Halloween-esque store, presumably out of town. She didn't go to the local store. As a result, she didn't become her costume, so they were able to deduce it was the source of everything that is happening is this store. Giles, we end up finding out he has a history with Ethan, which will come back in a few episodes, unfortunately. They end up having a bit of a confrontation. You find out that Giles, I guess, was kind of into some dark magic, and Ethan was also into the dark magic. He still seems to be. He was just kind of playing a joke on the town, just silly games. But they end up reversing the curse just in time so that Buffy's able to save herself from Spike. Everyone goes back to normal. And there's this really sweet moment. I'm gonna cheese so hard. There's this sweet moment where, because I repeat, Willow was a ghost, she goes back into her body, and she is now under the sheet again instead of the Spice Girls looking costume. But I mean, after she has just spent basically all night being perceived by others, being acknowledged as the woman that she is, she decides to take the ghost sheet off and she walks around in her fucking sexy Halloween costume. When she's walking down the crosswalk, who does she happen to, well, she doesn't see him, but who happens to see her? Oz. Yep, Oz is in his van, and when he sees her, he's just like, who is that? Then this leads us into episode 7. I can't really call episode 7 a monster of the week episode. It's titled Lie to Me. The episode begins with Buffy patrolling and slaying as she does. She ends up seeing Angel while out patrolling, and what is Angel doing? He's having a very intimate looking conversation with Drew. But obviously nothing is going on. He's literally just having a conversation with Drew, and Drew, being the way that she is very up on him. We also see that they have a bit of a history, which we will talk more about in a little bit. The episode continues. We see that there is this new guy who has moved into Sunnydale called Ford. He appears to have a history with Buffy. It seems like they were friends back in LA. They end up going out that night to the Bronze, where we see that apparently Ford knew the truth about Buffy because he follows her while she goes to slay a vampire. And he automatically, he's like, oh, you're the vampire slayer. This makes it obviously more convenient for her. She's like, it's great. I get a slice of my old life, and it's this guy who apparently already knew who I was, so it's like killing two birds with one stone. However, Angel is not getting the best vibes from Ford, It's probably 50% out of jealousy and just 50% out of his gut feeling, of which he's not wrong. Spoilers, right? Although that's what this entire video is. But there's a really sweet moment where Angel goes to Willow's house and she lets him in and everything, and they have a conversation about how Angel feels a little bit sussed out by Ford, and with Willow's help, because she knows about the net, they track down some of Ford's information, and that's when they find out that Ford is not actually a student in Sunnydale, which means why is he there? He has not actually been transferred to Sunnydale. Somehow she also finds out some of his whereabouts and where he usually hangs out, and that's where they stumble upon this hangout for losers, is what they are. I'm sorry. Who worship vampires, and it seems like Ford is rocking with these guys. While all of that is transpiring and like Xander, Willow, and Angel are going out to this place to stake it out, Buffy's hanging out with Ford around the school, showing him around, when these two vampires suddenly show up out of fucking nowhere. Buffy goes to slay one of them, and Ford takes care of the other. But he didn't actually. He tells Buffy that he killed that vampire, when in reality, he let that vampire go in exchange for information, which we will find out that information presumably was like, where is your master? Which in this case is Spike, because Spike is kind of the new leader in command in Sunnydale. However, Ford lies to Buffy and tells her that he did kill that female vampire. However, later that same night, while Buffy, Giles, and I believe Jenny as well, maybe, are talking in the library about what happened that night and the two vampires that attacked and why did they attack, the female vampire who Ford presumably killed comes out of nowhere. She comes out of the library, like out of Giles's study, with one of Giles's books in hand, and then runs off. She has now stolen this ancient book, whatever it is. It will come back in a few episodes. But that's how Buffy automatically knows, oh, Ford lied. I don't know why he lied, but Ford lied. And then of course the next day, Willow and Xander tell Buffy about where Ford has been hanging out, i.e. these vampire dens, vampire worshipping dens. At the same time, Ford goes to Spike and he kind of makes a deal. And you can kind of probably guess what the deal is. Ford wants eternal life. He wants to be turned into a vampire in exchange for Buffy, because obviously Spike wants Buffy more than anything, so he can kill her. Ford concocts this plan to, I guess, kind of lure Buffy into the vampire worshipping den, is what we're gonna call it. Buffy just ends up walking in there by herself because she really wants to get a bit of an explanation out of Ford, and she also wants to tell these kids, who are her same age, but they might as well be, they're kids to me. She wants to tell these dumbass kids who worship vampires and want to become vampires that they're literally just about to be an all-you-can-eat buffet. These vampires are not going to turn you. They're not these goddesses and gods, these children of the night of, you know, Nyx or whatever. They're vampires. They're demons without a soul who are literally going to murder you. We do find out that Ford very well does not really give a fuck about these vampires, nor about this cult who worships them. He doesn't think that they're anything amazing or that they're gods and, you know, children of the night or anything. It's more so that Ford has cancer and he wants to not die and he wants to not be in pain. So if a mortal life and becoming a vampire is the way to it, then that's just the fucking way it is. And if that means that these people in here, these other fellow cult worshippers, have to die and become an all-you-can-eat buffet just for him to get his end of the bargain and become immortal, then it is what it is. There's then this really important conversation between Ford and Buffy after she finds out the truth. He basically says something along the lines of, I had no choice, when referring to the actions that he's done in this episode, betraying Buffy, betraying all these poor innocent outcasts who feel lonely and are quite frankly worshipping vampires because they clearly have nothing else in life. He says, I had no choice. And Buffy says a line that is very, I would say, a theme for this entire season. She tells him that you had a choice, and it might not have been a good choice, but you had a choice. The theme of choices that you make and the consequences that those choices have are huge in this season, and we definitely see that, I think, for the first time, glimpses of that here. Buffy ends up, of course, saving the day for some of these kids, not all of them. The rest of them die, including Ford. Or does he? Technically, Ford did keep his end of his promise, like of the deal. He brought Spike Buffy, because Spike and the vampires end up coming later on. He did bring Buffy to Spike. It's just Buffy escaped. Spike could have easily, he could have killed Ford just cause that's just how Spike is. But by the end of the episode, we do find out that Spike actually did turn Ford, because Ford, after he's put in his grave, Buffy is like patrolling his grave to see if he's gonna come back. He does come back. Spike did keep his end of the bargain. He did turn him into a vampire. But of course the episode then ends with Buffy spiking Ford and killing him. And that's how the episode ends. Some small notes that I have from this episode. There is this really funny moment where we find out that Jenny and Giles were on a monster truck date. And quite frankly, as much as I like the episode Lie to Me, I would have rather seen 43 minutes of Jenny and Giles at a monster truck date any day of the week. We're also finally more privy in this episode to some of the resentment and, quite frankly, some of the jealousy that Spike holds towards Angel.
Quick editing note, but I actually forgot to mention that in this episode we do find out that in his past, Angel actually is the person who turned Drew into a vampire. But before he did that, he actually did drive her insane, kill all of her friends and family, and then he turned her into a vampire, basically against her will. So just, yeah, really sweet romantic stuff.
This is then followed by episode 8, titled The Dark Age. I'm not even going to talk about the plot. One, I don't remember it much. I don't. That's crazy. And also, who fucking cares? Sadly, episode 8 is our first Giles background episode, so I should love it because I think it should be pretty obvious that I'm fairly Giles biased. I love him. But this episode is a snooze fest. So this is a bit of a continuation of some of the things that we got introduced to in Halloween, because we do see Ethan again and we find out there's this demon who is slowly killing off all the people who Giles was friends with, who were, I guess, in the same dark magic, I don't know, friend group. And Ethan is next, and then after Ethan it's Giles, so Ethan kind of teams up with Giles so that they don't die. I don't care. There's a moment where Jenny calls Giles a sexy fuddy-duddy, and I have to agree. There's also this really cute moment where Jenny is definitely flirting. She's so flirty vibes, it's unreal. And she is giving Giles one of his books back that he let her borrow. She is pretending that she dog-eared all the pages and that she left coffee stains everywhere and that she highlighted and annotated every page, which gives him a look of utter horror. She's so smooth. I repeat, it's a little bit unrealistic. And also his look of horror at the thought of someone marking up his books like that. I would feel exactly the same way. If someone told me they dog-eared the pages on my book, I would have to like sue for damages. So yeah, this episode is very forgettable. The plot is very forgettable. It's kind of nice to see that Giles isn't a piece of wet toast, but like I could have told you that before this episode. I didn't need this episode to tell me that in the first place. And then the episode does kind of end with Jenny and Giles actually not in the best place, because this demon that was after Giles and after Ethan, there was a moment where it also possessed Jenny, and so she just kind of needed to take a bit of a break from Giles, you know, just for a moment. And that's kind of how the episode ends, unfortunately. Jenny and Giles are potentially not fully vibing right now. Now, after the atrocious episode that was The Dark Age, that leaves us with, I'm pretty sure I checked it up, the next 3 episodes were the last episodes of, I believe, 1996 it was. After this, the show takes a bit of hiatus and then comes back for the second half of season 2. So episode 9 starts. It is titled What's My Line Part 1. It is career week at Sunnydale, because of course it is, something else that my school never did personally. My school was very low income. Buffy feels just a bit hopeless about this concept and about a future career, because like if she is a slayer, what career does she feasibly really have in the future? Meanwhile, while all of that is happening, if you will remember in episode 7, Lie to Me, the vampire that Ford let go stole one of Giles's books. But I suppose that Giles, in the chaos of everything that happened after Lie to Me, because remember, after Lie to Me was the horrible episode I basically just skipped, the Dark Age, where Giles, it was a Giles episode, he was going through the motherfucking ringer. So he wasn't thinking about that book that was stolen 2 episodes ago, turns out by Spike, and it seems that that book has the answer to how to cure Drew, because for context, I haven't really mentioned it because it's just not really that important, I think. Drew is kind of sick. The way that Spike explains it is that there was this violent mob in Prague who attacked them, and it left Drew very weak. And so since then, she's been a little, I mean, she's always been a bit crazy, but she's just been on the weaker side. Like, she hasn't really been able to go out and hunt and things like that like she normally would be able to. So he stole this book in order to be able to find a cure for her. He is afraid that Buffy the Vampire Slayer is going to ruin that, as she tends to do, because he is the villain in her show. What he decides to do is call in the Order of Taraka. Apparently the Order of Taraka are 3, I believe it's 3, savage assassins who are basically overkill. There's actually this really funny scene where Spike tells one of his vampire goonies that he's gonna invoke the Order of Taraka to keep Buffy distracted so that he has enough time to find a cure for Drew. And the vampire goonie is like, don't you think that's kind of overkill? And then Spike says something along the lines of, I think it's just enough kill, something like that. I laughed really hard personally. While all of that is happening, Buffy and Angel are actually spending more time together, and I will say, once again, as a Buffy and Angel non-enthusiast, season 2 is them at their cutest, and I think What's My Line part 1 and 2 is them at their peak. Personally, Buffy and Angel decide to even go on a bit of an ice skating date. It's very cute. He just wants to take her out on a normal-ish date. Of course, it has to be at night when the rink would be closed, but it's the thought that counts. Later on in that episode, I had to bring it up because I put it in my notes because it was just so important for me to mention it. Willow ends up not getting her results back for the career week because she didn't even need to take the test. The government, who I'm convinced has a close eye on Sunnydale, because why wouldn't you? I think that she is so intelligent that they already know that they want her in any kind of government program, I guess, that she wants. And they tell her that there was only one other student in all of Sunnydale who equally tested as well as her and could be on her level. Ladies and gentlemen, we turn around. We see, who is it? It's Oz. Yes, Oz and Willow finally meet in this episode, like have a proper conversation, and we've made it. However, the Order of Taraka was invoked, as I mentioned, so we start seeing some people get introduced who potentially are members of the Order of Taraka, keyword on potentially. One of them is this creepy guy who took the public bus to come to Sunnydale and then just steps off the bus ready to kill. I would have loved to see him during the entire bus ride. Where did he come from? What was the bus ride like? Did he pay for the fare? There's also this man who ends up putting himself in the neighbor's house next to where Buffy lives, and he is probably the creepiest in my opinion. He's made out of insects, so technically he's an insect, but his body is made out of like little worms. It's the grossest thing in the world. And then we see this young woman come out of an airplane, I guess. She was hidden in the cargo bay or something. I don't know terms, but she was hiding, and she's this woman. She looks a little bit suspicious. The man from the bus ends up attacking Buffy during Buffy and Angel's ice skating escapades. And while this is happening, that guy gets defeated, obviously. And Buffy and Angel end up kissing while Angel is in his vampire face mode, because he just got done beating that one guy's ass. And the other female who presumably is a part of the Order of Taraka, she ends up witnessing this and kind of looks on in disgust. So just a little interesting, I think. Towards the end of the episode, the people end up kind of getting paired off to kind of work together, but separate. And Cordelia and Xander end up getting paired together, which is a little bit interesting. The woman from the Order of Taraka ends up kidnapping Angel, and she ends up putting him in this like room where there's direct window contact, so once the sun starts rising, Angel's gonna become a pile of dust. So that's always super fun, you know? And the episode ends with them fighting and Buffy being like, "Who are you?" And Kendra being like, "I'm Kendra. I'm the vampire slayer." This leads us into What's My Line Part 2. So Buffy is fighting Kendra, who just announced that she's the vampire slayer, and she's just like, "Bitch, that's so cute. That is so cute that you would say that to me of all people when I am the vampire slayer. Like, the show is named after me." They end up going to Giles and they kind of ration it out, and the timeline adds up if you think about it, because Buffy died. She straight up died for a few minutes during the events of Prophecy Girl, which means that when one Slayer dies, a new one arises. It would make sense that if Buffy died, technically on paper, a new Slayer, nature would work its will and create one, i.e. Kendra. The only thing that doesn't really make sense here, which I don't think I'm the only one who's ever thought this, because I've been on the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Reddit, subreddit enough to know this is not like a new thing. But how the fuck, like, they end up explaining why, that Kendra's the vampire slayer, and that she's super skilled and trained in a way that I'm sure Giles wishes Buffy was, because from a young age, her parents basically gave her away to her watcher to train, which is why she's so good. But like, how the fuck is that even possible? First of all, are parents informed that their kids are slayers? Because then why doesn't Joyce know? Who told Kendra's parents? Also, does that entail that a slayer is going to be a slayer before they are one? How would they have known that Kendra was going to be a slayer is basically what I want to know. How did Kendra's parents know? How did the people who told Kendra's parents know that Kendra would then become a slayer after Buffy Summers died for a few minutes? Like, how the fuck would they have known that is all I want to know. Another thing I do want to mention when it comes to Kendra is that she is played by the absolutely stunning, never aging Bianca Lawson. Like, that woman is so gorgeous, it's unreal. But unfortunately, they decided to give her an accent. That was a choice. I don't think it was her choice. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. She was just a paid actress, but it was a choice, and it was made, and we can never come back from that now. Kendra explains that she thought that potentially Buffy was a vampire, kind of sus, because like, why the fuck are you a vampire slayer making out with a vampire? Which, like, all valid points, Kendra, you preach your shit. And so she explains that she locked Angel up while they all kind of come up with a plan to kill the other members of the Order of Taraka, and also, quite frankly, kill Spike, because he's the one who got these motherfuckers here in the first place. It turns out that the other third member of the Order of Taraka was literally just this random woman. We see her try to shoot Buffy, which means that the only one left is Insect Bug Boy, who is right next to Buffy's house. And he's pretending to be like a door-to-door cosmetic salesman. Remember, Cordelia and Xander got paired up at the end of the last episode, and they actually decide to go to Joyce's house, to Buffy's house, which means they're in close proximity to Insect Bug Guy. Cordelia, being Cordelia, lets him into the house because she's like, free makeup samples? Fuck yeah, sign me up. They end up having to fight for their fucking lives to not get attacked and eaten and possibly killed, I'm assuming, by this insect man. And in that moment when they're fighting for their lives, they end up fighting with each other. And then after they fight with each other, they end up kissing each other. I feel like me explaining it the way that I have been explaining it, you're not fully gonna understand the moments that Cordelia and Xander have had this season. There are so many one-off moments between them that if they didn't amount to something would then be weird. So the fact that this happened does not surprise me in the least bit. I'm not mad about it. But yeah, after that, Buffy and Kendra obviously end up fighting Spike. There's also a moment where Spike kind of has a building fall on him, so he actually ends up paralyzed. It's so silly. We also see more of Oz, wherein Oz just kind of, he's able to match Willow so well. It's really nice to see. And also Cordelia and Xander are finally able to kill the Bug Order member, which is kind of a nice like full circle moment for Xander as well, in my opinion, because if you remember, he was the one in season 1 who was targeted by a praying mantis. I'm pretty sure she was a praying mantis, but just a full circle moment for him to finally kind of get revenge on the bugs. The episode ends with Kendra going back to her home, her and Buffy a bit closer now. We love to see it. Also, more importantly, we do see that whatever Spike was working towards for Drew to get cured, it worked. Drew is now back in full health, so the turntable's there. That kind of is our confirmation that it's not the end of their story yet. We're gonna come back to them. But in a way, this was the end of their story in terms of being the main villains of this respective season. Overall, it's a pretty good two-parter. While I was watching, I was like, this feels so much like the mid-season finale. So imagine my fucking shock and surprise when I went on Wikipedia and found out that the real mid-season finale was the next episode. Season 2, episode 11 is titled Ted. And like I mentioned, this is apparently the real mid-season finale. It really doesn't feel like it. The episode is sort of a filler episode, I would say, especially after the heavy plot episode and everything that we got in the last two. Buffy's mother, Joyce, is dating this guy who is the guy, John Ritter, I believe his name is, from Three's a Company, so just keep that in mind. And Buffy seems a little bit uncomfortable with the idea. He hasn't really done anything yet. She just doesn't really, I guess, know how she feels about her mother potentially dating someone new, which, like, valid, I think. As the episode continues, though, we see that everyone around Buffy is, like, enamored with this man. Like, Willow loves him, Xander loves him. Obviously, Joyce is romantically interested in him. But he seems to have some kind of vendetta against Buffy or something. He's only ever rude to her in private where no one else is around. He's also very, like, he's, like, too perfect at everything and very robotic-like. And if you're wondering why, it's because he's a robot. The lore, from what I understood of this episode, was that there was a real man whose wife left him, I suppose, divorced him, and therefore he created a robot that was perfect. That's this guy, Ted. And the robot kind of is him, I suppose. And he used the perfect version of himself and his traits in order to lure women into a sense of, like, marriage. And then he murders them. He's done this before, and he clearly plans to do it to Joyce. So keep all that in mind. That's happening. That's like the main plot, wherein poor Joyce is being targeted by this serial killer. However, before we find any of that crazy shit out, Buffy gets into an argument with him before she knows he's a robot, when she thinks that he's just this normal, mortal human guy. And they get into an argument, and Ted definitely starts it. And then he starts to get physical. He slaps her. And Buffy has this moment where she's like, I was really hoping that you would do that. And she, of course, hits him back. But this is, even though, like I said, we know later on that he's a robot, we find that out. At this point, he's just a man. And she's a slayer with enhanced powers. So when she hits him, he actually ends up falling down the stairs and presumably dies, which means that there is about 15 minutes of this episode where Buffy fully is convinced that she killed somebody. And there is a very interesting moral implication here that obviously gets swept away very quickly, because at the end of the day, Buffy was right in this episode, and this man was a serial killer, and she actually saved her mother's life. It's a very interesting concept, and I think that we should put a pin on that for some later time. That episode ends though with robot guy being gone, Joyce is saved, and we all learned, I think, a very valuable lesson. Nothing is worse than a stepfather. We come back after the mid-season finale to season 2, episode 12, titled Bad Eggs. It's not a good episode by any stretch of the imagination, and I think that Bad Eggs is probably the 3rd worst episode in the season, but it's not as bad, I feel like, as people be hyping it up to be. I am not even gonna fully explain the plot for this, kind of like I've been skipping over some of the more filler episodes, because why bother? It's literally never gonna come back. Even though this isn't a bad episode necessarily, I was kind of head empty, no thoughts during this entire episode, only because I was so ready and so anxious to get to the future episodes that I already know are gonna be so much better, you know? The second half of season 2 is so strong, so it's unfortunate that we did kind of start with this one, which is one of the worst ones. This episode also felt unbelievably long, which I think also is probably why so many people dislike it. It really feels like it goes on forever. There is a lesson in sex ed. This is like the obligatory, everybody's got to take care of a egg episode. The eggs start turning people to act differently, because lo and behold, the eggs are actually alien eggs, and the aliens are hatching at night when no one can see them and latching on to the humans of Sunnydale. And they're doing that because there's some kind of big alien god of some sort at the bottom of the basement, boiler room, whatever, in Sunnydale High. And all the humans then kind of start trying to dig them out, because all the humans are being infected by alien brain, basically. And then Buffy has to save the day. There are also these country redneck vampires. One of them dies, one of them doesn't. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, we will see one of those country vampires again, so keep that in mind. But that doesn't really matter. It's not really an important character. And this entire episode is so non-consequential, because I can assure you that these alien hatchling eggs are never going to come back. The only interesting concept of this episode is I think, fully are starting to get fed the theme of this season more than we ever had beforehand, which is the theme of responsibility and the theme of consequences for your choices, which will lead us right into the second half of season 2, which we are now fully about to begin with our next episode. Season 2, episode 13 is titled Surprise, and I just want to put my first note here, which is that Oz is so smooth, it's actually unreal. He has a level of charisma to him that I believe maybe only Jenny Calendar does up to this point. He is just very suave, and I live for any interaction between him and Willow. The episode starts, Buffy has a nightmare. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned earlier during when I was discussing episode 1 of season 2, that Buffy's dreams tend to sometimes be a little bit prophetic. I hope that's how you say the word, because that's how I'm saying it. In that they are warnings at times for things that could potentially happen. So she has a nightmare that Drew kills Angel. So she's very much on high alert, worried that something is going to happen to Angel. We also find out some piece of information about Jenny. We find out is related to this very racially, stereotypically racist stereotype. There's just no other way to put it. It's just a racist stereotype. But she's related to the racist stereotype of the Romani people. And if you remember, this group of Romani people were the same ones who cursed Angel all those years back and gave him a soul. So really, Jenny is related to the people. She's, her ancestors are the people who cursed Angelus all those years ago. It seems like she has been sent here on a mission back way before in season 1, clearly about something to do with Angel. And this is right after Buffy has also had a kind of, prophecy dream that Angel is going to die by Drew's hand. And it is Buffy's birthday, so everybody wants to kind of throw her a surprise birthday party, and by everyone I really just mean our core people. Giles is like insisting to the group, Buffy deserves a birthday party, she deserves this, which is very sweet since Giles is usually the one who's very strict when it comes to Buffy. It's at the Bronze, of course, and Jenny is the one tasked to pick up Buffy, but they really give her the creepy boots edit while she's picking her up, so it's almost like you think in your mind that something is going to happen, because when we found out that Jenny was related to the Romani people, we also, the uncle tells her to keep Buffy and Angel away from each other. He doesn't explain why, which I think if he had just explained why, this could have literally solved us so many problems. But he doesn't tell her why Buffy and Angel must be separated. So when Jenny comes to pick Buffy up, she's getting super creepy edit. We think, I don't know, maybe she's going to kill this girl. But she just picks her up, takes her to the party. We see that Willow's date is Oz, and actually when she's getting dropped off at the party, a vampire also just so happens to be there. They fight, and at that moment Oz is now kind of officially a part of the gang, because at that moment he realizes, oh shit, vampires are real. And it's actually so funny because Willow's like, I'm sure this is a lot to process, and he's like, actually this makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, yeah, it really should. Like, if you live in Sunnydale, vampires existing should make a lot of sense. However, the vampire that attacked Buffy, we see that he had like a package, and his package, you might be asking, what is in this mystical package? It is an arm. He was one of Drew's goons, of course, because as I mentioned at the end of What's My Line Part 2, Drew fully recovered and now Spike is the one in a wheelchair. Do not ask why he's injured and why that injury lasts for so long, because I can't tell you. But Drew has been collecting parts for a little party she's throwing, and the body parts that she's trying to collect are to revive this demon of sorts called the Judge. We actually learn that the Judge's hand, which is what the vampire Goonie had, which Buffy now has because she defeated him, the Judge's hand can actually burn anybody who has a bit of humanity in them. Please put a pin on that. When they realize that that hand that they now have belongs to the Judge, and they realize that what's happening is that Drew is just crazy enough to call upon the Judge and try to revive him and put him together all Frankenstein style, Angel realizes that it would be a smart decision for him to take the hand and go somewhere far off to make sure that the hand never gets reconnected with the rest of the body. Because originally all of the Judge's body parts were scattered everywhere, as it should be, because you can't actually kill the Judge. I'm assuming that also means you can't really burn his body or anything, but you can cut him into pieces. That's what they did all those thousands of years ago, and then scatter him around everywhere. Of course, Buffy is sad because it's her birthday, and now she has to say goodbye to her boyfriend on her birthday. But right as Angel is about to leave, some of the Goonies come, they steal the arm once again, bring it to Drew, and Drew is able to put the Judge back together. Outfit change, hair change, because I was having some technical difficulties with my SD card. That has hopefully been fixed now. Drew and Spike bring the Judge back to life by putting all of his parts back together, but they end up being saved from the Judge's hands touch that could literally kill them, because they have a bit of humanity to them. To truly survive the Judge's touch, you would have to have no interest, no passion in anything, no good in you. You would have to be pure evil. Keep that in mind. Buffy and Angel then decide to concoct this really stupid plan to go and see where Drew is. I'm assuming it's just, you know, to see if the Judge really is back, which, ooh, what a surprise he is. They end up escaping just in time. The episode ends with the accumulation of multiple episodes worth of buildup, wherein Angel and Buffy finally have sex together for the first time. And on top of that, they also say I love you to each other for the first time. After that beautiful, tender moment, we then cut to Angel waking up by himself in the middle of the night. He seems to be in excruciating pain, and he screams out Buffy's name, and the episode ends there. And I hopefully will be able to play a clip of that if I don't get copyrighted, because it's so well done. I just have to play a clip of it. Episode 14, which is titled Innocence, then kicks off right where Surprise left off. So we cut back to Angel. He's outside in the pouring rain, in pain, screaming out Buffy's name. And then all of a sudden he stops and he seems to no longer be in pain. Good for him. Some random lady who I suppose lives in this random alley apartment block. I don't understand the dynamics there. She's outside smoking a cigarette. She obviously saw Angel. Homegirl is like, hey, you good? He's like, I've never felt better. And then he kills her. You kind of can see where I'm going with this. We then cut to Angel visiting Spike and Drusilla, as well as the judge. Spike is like, you just made the dumbest fucking decision of your life. And the judge is like, word, agreed. Goes to touch Angel. Absolutely nothing happens, which, as I just reiterated, that means Angel has truly nothing in him. And there are many theories as to why this is. Why is it that when Angel is without a soul, because basically that's what's happened, I'll explain why in a moment. Why is it that when Angel is without a soul, he is pure evil personified, versus characters like Spike can still have a bit of humanity to them, or even Drew as well, or literally almost any other vampire. We can basically determine that now Angel has gone evil, he has no soul, and he is now going to work alongside Spike and Drew and the judge to bring an end to all humanity and of course kill Buffy, because Angel feels disgusted that Buffy brought out any kind of humanity in him in the first place. Super fun stuff. Buffy wakes up the next morning alone, of course. The first thoughts that are going through her mind are that of an insecure girlfriend who just had sex with her older boyfriend for the first time, and not thoughts of a fucking vampire slayer who just had sex with her vampire boyfriend for the first time. She's probably thinking, was I bad at it? Was I not good? Was he not satisfied? Why isn't he here the next morning? You know, it's kind of sad. She goes to school, acts like everything is normal-ish. Even though she does say that she hasn't really heard from Angel, she doesn't want to make a big deal out of it because then she would have to explain what happened last night, and that's not something she wants to discuss yet. Everyone's in the library per usual, and they're doing research on the judge per usual. Willow then walks in on Xander and Cordelia making out, because throughout these past few episodes, ever since What's My Line Part 1 and 2, which really is only like 4 episodes ago, Cordelia and Xander have been having a little bit of a secret rendezvous relationship. They'll like hook up in random closets and stuff, but nobody knew about it, and now somebody does, and it's Willow who just happens to walk in on them. This scene is one of the few times where I am actually hashtag not Team Willow, and that's very rare that I side with Xander over Willow, especially when it comes to things about the relationship between those two. But I really personally do not believe that Willow has any right to be upset with Xander for the reason that she is upset with him. If she were upset and she had said, I don't understand why you've been lying to me, I would be Team Willow, because I concur. He doesn't still owe you anything, but I understand after years of friendship that you would want to know the truth and you wouldn't want your friend sneaking around behind your back. But that is not what Willow says. Willow specifically says, I can't believe that you would ever even like her, and it just proves to me that you would literally rather date someone that you hate versus date me. And that is just so out of pocket for many reasons. Number one, it's out of pocket because nowhere in the show so far has she straight up told Xander that she has feelings for him. Obviously it's insinuated, but it's just an insinuation, okay? And that's why I said that when Xander exposed his feelings for Buffy directly to her and asked her out on a date, he'd had the appropriate response at that moment. He didn't really respond to the rejection too well, but he did the thing that he was supposed to do, which Willow never did. Okay, so Willow really has no right to be mad there. And even if she had done that, and then my computer's going off. Even if she had done that and he still like rejected her, let's say, and then goes and makes out with Cordelia, he has every single right to, and he doesn't owe her anything because she has feelings that he doesn't reciprocate at this particular moment. So I have to not be Team Willow on this one, I'm sorry. We cut later on in the episode and Buffy goes to Angel's apartment where Angel is there. She's like, oh my god, why didn't you tell me you went somewhere? Where were you? What happened? And he is so cold to her and he's so mean to her in this scene. It's very hard to watch, in my opinion. However, again, Buffy is thinking in the mindset of a teenage girl who has had sex with her older boyfriend for the first time and not thinking about the supernatural of it all. So she really just takes it as him being an asshole. While this is all happening, we do get a scene with Jenny and with her uncle, wherein we finally, as an audience at least, find out the truth. Which, I repeat, if the uncle had just said the truth during any moment in Surprise, the last episode, none of this would have happened and this could have been easily avoided. Because basically the way that the curse worked was that Angel was cursed with humanity. It was not supposed to be a gift that he got his humanity back. It was supposed to be a curse. And he was supposed to be tortured by it every single day of his life. Therefore, the moment that Angel experienced any moment of true happiness, the curse would reverse because it's no longer a curse at that point. He would then be almost rewarded and being able, to feel love when that's not at all what he deserves, according to these people who cursed him all those years ago. Having sex with Buffy at the end of Surprise was that moment of true bliss for him. They said, I love you to each other. They were intimate with each other. They could spend the rest of their life together if they really wanted to, or at least the rest of her life together. However, that's not what the curse is about. It's not what they're rocking with. The curse reverted. He's now back to having no soul. And that in of itself, I think, is such a brilliant curse, right? Because of course it is evil that a vampire would have to be remembered of all the murders that they've done throughout the years. But it could easily become a gift if that person is then able to live a normal life and feel love and have a sense of normalcy. So I think the curse itself is quite brilliant. I just don't think it was ever properly explained. Clearly not explained to Angel, and quite frankly not explained to anyone else except for, I guess, a few select Romani people, because why the fuck did Jenny not know about this? She had been instructed to keep Buffy and Angel away from each other, which she thought was null and void because she was like, they're better when they're with each other than when they're apart. But if she had known that the reason they couldn't be together is because all of this would then happen, I'm pretty sure she would have done her assignment correctly. But because nobody communicated that with her, here we are now. So just pisses me off that the terms and conditions, right, never were written out, at least to Jenny at the bare fucking minimum. We cut to nighttime at the library. The whole gang, of course, is together researching the judge, where they do find a piece of valuable information, which is that there is no weapon forged by humans that could potentially kill the judge. So keep that in mind. There is no weapon forged that could kill the judge in like whatever goddamn AD year the judge was last awoken. Correct? Correct. All of a sudden, Angel comes out of nowhere. Buffy's not there, by the way, because Buffy is elsewhere being sad girl right now. Angel comes and he is seemingly nice, seeming to pretend to, I guess, want to work with the Scoobies, but it's all a trick. And he's doing it so that obviously he can kind of scare Buffy a little bit, hurt the people who love her, and also really just let everybody know the bitch is back. And I will say this scene is so sad to me for one particular reason, which is how easily Willow and Xander just trust an Angel. Like, he tells them to go do something and they do it without even thinking about it. And with Willow, that's fair enough. But with even Xander, who hates Angel's guts, seeing that, it's just kind of sad to see how much trust they have in this person who is now about to betray them. Jenny comes out of absolute fucking nowhere with the cross because, of course, her uncle already told her basically that Angel has turned evil again. So she knows what nobody else knows yet. She helps save the day alongside Buffy as well. We have a very heartbreaking moment where we see Willow come to the realization about what caused Angel to turn evil, and it's just really sad to watch. We get an equally sad scene later on, like literally a few minutes after this in the same episode, where Giles comes to the realization about what caused Angel's shift as well, and it's just so sad every single time because it's just like you feel for Buffy in that moment and you just feel for her so badly. Speaking of Buffy, she has one of her little dreams again, and in her dream, basically, Angel tells her that Jenny knows more than she's leading on. Buffy confronts Jenny the next day, and this is the moment I was talking about where Giles also finds out the truth, and Jenny basically becomes excommunicated. She is no longer a part of the group. Giles especially puts his foot down with her. It's actually really sad, and I will talk about this. I think that they were a little bit too rough on Jenny. I understand the initial disappointment and the initial anger, but I feel like as a whole they were way too hard on her, and they should have chilled the fuck out a little bit, because this anger towards Jenny continues for quite a few episodes. It's not just this one, sadly. They decide, however, to go visit Jenny's uncle because he'll have more information, but boo-hoo, Angel got to him first and he killed the uncle, of course, which does beg the question, if something is not private property, I suppose, can any vampire just enter any hotel room? Because that seems very sketch. Going back to the Scoobies now, they're like, well, we have to find a way to kill the judge because that's our main focus right now. We'll deal with Angel's bitch ass later. At that moment, Xander, slain once again, uses some of his previous military background from the Halloween episode. I told you it would come back. He uses it in order to come up with a plan, because he read, like, he reads the prophecy, the whole prophecy of there's no weapon forged that could kill the judge, and he's just like, well, wait a damn motherfucking second. This was written when people didn't even have showers yet. I highly doubt that in 1997, 1998, whenever this aired, I think it was 1998, I highly doubt that there was still no weapon forged that could kill the judge, and they end up getting and stealing a military weapon that is a scene so badass, so epic, that once again, if I can play it without getting copyrighted, I 1000% will.
What's that do?
During the scene where Xander is stealing the military weapon, he kind of teams up with Cordelia, and in the getaway van are Willow and Oz, who have a really sweet moment, and I was cheesing. Oz is basically like, I'm not gonna kiss you because right now I think that you just want to kiss me to make your friend Xander kind of jealous, but I want to make sure that the first time you kiss me, it's because you want to. Angel and Buffy have a bit of a showdown, but when it comes down to it, Buffy is unable to kill him at this particular moment, and she says, not now. Not that I won't kill you, but I'm not going to kill you now. And this ties back to the entire theme of the season with choices and then with consequences, because in this episode, I feel like there's a direct parallel between the Lie to Me episode with her friend Ford. She specifically told Ford, you have a choice. It's not a good choice, but you have a choice, which he obviously chose the wrong one. His consequences for it is that he died anyways because Buffy staked him when he became a vampire, right? Here, Buffy had a choice, which was to kill Angel. It wasn't a good choice because obviously she would be killing the love of her life, but she had a choice and she didn't take it. And it will come back to obviously bite her in the ass. I'll be trying to go through the next 2 episodes fairly quickly because, like I said, I'm trying to keep the length of this video under 5 hours. That's the goal. So episode 15 is titled Phases, and it is basically our first Oz-centric episode, which might seem weird to you because he's not a main character, and in total he's probably been in less than like 5 overall episodes of the show, but he very well fucking deserves his own episode, so he got one. We find out that there is this werewolf that has been looming around Sunnydale. It seems like whoever the werewolf is must have been a newly turned werewolf because the werewolf activity just recently started. So throughout the episode we get a bit more of obviously Oz and Willow's relationship being like a real relationship, and we see a little bit of Xander's, I would argue, jealousy, but I don't really necessarily think at this point it's romantic jealousy. I think it's more jealousy of, I feel that Xander has this very possessive almost kind of attitude towards Willow because they've been friends for so long, I think, besides anything else, and therefore he has seen Oz as sort of competition for his attention and someone who could potentially take over his role of like #1 guy in her life, besides maybe her father. Buffy and Giles kind of start going a bit of like on the hunt for the werewolf, but not to kill it because they very much do recognize that this werewolf is potentially just a normal human person who's really only a werewolf for 3 times out of the year. Before the full moon, during the full moon, and the day directly after the full moon. Only 3 days that this person is a werewolf. They want to just capture the werewolf, find out who it is, and then help them. There is one person around the school that is a very big suspect for a potential werewolf, and that is the jock Larry, which I believe I mentioned him previously during the Halloween episode. He sort of is very this like aggressive, very macho, sexually assaulting girls kind of guy. I do love him. We see him a lot throughout the seasons 2 and 3, the high school seasons. He'll just be in the background of a story such as this one. And they really think that it's Larry, especially because he was like bitten by a dog recently. So all signs point to Larry. Xander ends up confronting him one day in the locker room, and then Larry comes out with his secret, which is that he is quite literally a homosexual. He believes that Xander is gay too, because the way that Xander worded his like interrogation was, "I know what you're going through," assuming that he's talking about being a werewolf. Not because Xander would know, but just because he's trying to relate with him and be like, "I know what you're going through, don't worry." But when you say that to a guy who's actually just gay and you're trying to get him to come out of the closet, of course he's gonna think you're gay too. And it becomes a bit of a running joke that Larry thinks Xander is gay. During one of the nights that Buffy and Giles are werewolf hunting, they actually come upon a real werewolf hunter who kills for sport and money. Big analogy to like elephant hunters who, you know, get the tusk and sell them and make money and whatever. But he just seems like kind of an asshole. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that we may see him again, similar to how we are gonna see the country vampire from Bad Eggs again. I'm like 90% positive, and if I'm wrong, then just call me a clown. I don't know. So now Buffy and Giles have to worry about this werewolf hunter who wants to kill this potential innocent human being. After the second night, we find out that somebody died. And we as the audience know it was actually Angel who killed this teenage girl, because we quite literally see Angel do it. He's just doing it to be an asshole just because, to kind of mess with Buffy. Buffy doesn't know that it's a vampire yet. She doesn't find that out until later in the episode when she finds the body and finds the bite marks. And then the dead body, you know, wakes up as a vampire and basically says, "This is a message from Angel." So Buffy ends up finding out, but she doesn't know before the third night when the werewolf is going to turn. So Buffy is fully ready to kill this werewolf, right? Because she's like, well, now this werewolf is dangerous. They've taken a life, so I now have to kill them. They're out on the hunt. The werewolf hunter is also out on the hunt. This werewolf is about to fucking die. However, we as the audience find out after the second night, Oz is the werewolf, which I feel like should have been obvious because I did say this was an Oz-centric episode and there's been a surprising lack of Oz in my episode description. It's actually really funny. In one of, I think, the best comedic moments in this entire show, because Seth Green is actually quite funny depending on the source material that he gets, there is a very funny ass delivery where we find out earlier in the episode when Larry is talking about his dog bite, Oz makes a comparison joke and he's just like, "Yeah, my little baby cousin bit me last week. It really hurt." And lo and behold, he goes on the phone with his aunt and he's like, "Hey, Aunt whoever, is cousin a werewolf?" And then we don't hear what the aunt says on the other end of the line, but he's just like, "Oh, how long has that been going on?" Like, it's just so funny the way it's delivered. He's so casual. He's so Oz about finding out that his cousin is a werewolf, which means potentially either his aunt or his uncle are werewolves. And now he is a werewolf. It just runs in the family, I guess. After we find out, right, Oz goes to school and Buffy's out here preaching about how she's about to kill this werewolf because Buffy believes that this werewolf killed this poor teenage girl. He is freaking the fuck out, and he also feels quite guilty himself because he really has no recollection of anything that he does when he's a werewolf. So for all he knows, he really could have killed that girl. He has no fucking idea. So he fully intends to stay in this night and just lock himself in, chain himself up, try not to kill anybody. However, Willow decides on this day that she is no longer gonna let Oz blow her off, but keep in mind he's been blowing her off, like, or at least he blew her off this last time because he is scared that he is a werewolf, so he didn't want to hang out with her and potentially kill her. But Willow decides to take this day and this moment to tell him, no, you are not going to blow me off, sir, and I will be hanging out with you tonight. And she goes over to his house right as he turns. They end up going on a bit of a chase. That's when Buffy also has that whole realization that I mentioned earlier, where she finds out that Angel was actually the one who killed that teenage girl. So she's like, holy shit, we gotta capture this werewolf and help him out, and especially capture him before the werewolf hunter finds him. So it becomes this huge chase. Obviously Buffy wins and saves the day, and as a result Oz is able to be saved and not killed by that werewolf hunter who gets run out of town. And it's perfect for all. You know, Oz and Willow are, I think, definitely more official by the end of this episode, and it's just great. We love to see it. Episode 16 directly after that, called Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, I always mess up the order of those 3 words, is our first real Xander-centric episode. And I'm going to just tell you something right now that I don't think it's an unpopular opinion. Maybe it is, depends who you are, I'm not sure. But I love the Xander-centric episodes. There are about 2 that I can think of off the top of my very head, and I love both of them. The episode starts and it seems to be Valentine's Day. Xander and Cordelia are still doing their secret hookup rendezvous, right? They're really not so secret anymore because all of her friend group, including Harmony, remember the name Harmony? She's the girl who also fell down the stairs at the first episode, like the first season. All her friends kind of know that she's, 1, hanging out with the Scoobies a lot, and B, that she kind of has a thing for Xander, clearly, or they must be hooking up of some sort, because they call him a loser and they're like, you're a loser by comparison now, and they start to ostracize her a bit. So Cordelia naturally comes up with the idea that she has to break up with Xander, even though she doesn't really want to, because she cares about being popular more than anything else. However, Xander's on a totally different page right now, unfortunately, and it's Valentine's Day, and he's thinking that it's finally time to become more serious with Cordelia, and he buys her this heart necklace, which retrospectively is hideous in my opinion, but it's the thought that fucking counts. She likes it. He gives it to her during this Valentine's Day, like Dance of the Bronze or something, I don't know. He's dressed up real nice as well. Buffy helped him pick out an outfit, and it's just cute to see. We love to see it. However, right as he gives her the necklace, Cordelia accepts it and then breaks up with him. Super fun stuff. The next day at school, we see the return of Amy the Witch. If you remember from the witch episode in the first season, one of the very first ones, she's clearly doing much better now, and she seems to have been working on her magic a lot more. Xander notices this, and his first natural conclusion is, can you make a love potion for me? Meanwhile, if anyone who has ever seen any piece of media about magic knows, love potions are some of the trickiest potions to do, some of the trickiest magic. It's not easy, it's a lot of loopholes, and it's probably not going to turn out for the best, right? His main objective, his main goal is to make it so that Cordelia loves him, so that when Cordelia then tries to publicly, let's say, get him back, he can humiliate her the way that she humiliated him. In order to do this, I think he needs something of Cordelia's, so he gets the necklace from her once again. And it's actually really sad because she's just like, fine, I didn't even like this stupid necklace. Let me get it from my locker. But when she gets it from her locker, we, the audience, see she actually already had it on underneath her shirt. So she has to like quickly take it off. And it's like a really sad moment. She clearly wants to be with Xander, but she just has other priorities in her life, clearly. They perform the spell, and then the next day at school, Xander is fully ready to humiliate Cordelia. However, that's not really what happens. Instead, he starts noticing that every other female is kind of in love with him. It starts with Buffy, which should have been the first indicator that something was off, because Buffy starts coming on to him and making advances towards him when she has literally never done that before. Then Amy comes, same thing, starts making advances on him, all that fun stuff. Buffy and Amy end up getting into a fight over Xander, and in the moment Amy uses her magic against Buffy and turns her into a rat, which basically leaves Buffy useless for the rest of the episode. She's just going, being a fucking rat. But it also potentially puts her in danger, as Giles very cleverly points out, because she is quite literally a rat just lost around the school. If anything happens to her in rat form, Buffy's dead. So super dangerous. Amy then ends up having to work with Giles for most of the episode, since she really is the only witch here as of now, in order to find a way to reverse this love potion. Throughout the episode, we see more and more women just fall in love with Xander and gawk over him. We even see Jenny Calendar. We see Joyce. Literally everybody and anybody, Willow as well, of course. Then in a really true full circle moment, Cordelia's friends who ostracized her and were the reason that she broke up with Xander, they then ostracize her again because she is now the person who broke up with Xander when she had a perfect chance with him. And it's just like, what the fuck do you guys want from me, you know? All the girls in Sunnydale basically end up going absolutely crazy, including even, there's this really funny moment where even Drew, she also falls in love with Xander and is following after him. It's peak comedy in my opinion. However, the spell ends up getting reversed just in time. Buffy stops being a rat. Then the episode ends in a very sweet moment, of course, where Cordelia finally stands up to her friends and she tells them, if I want to fucking date Xander, I'm gonna date Xander because I don't know who the fuck you guys think you are, but you are all betas and I am the real alpha. I don't care what you guys think of me. And she walks off holding hands with him, and it's really fun to see. It's a sweet moment. I really like this episode. It's so silly that it circles back to just being really great and very enjoyable, and it has such good moments. Willow and Oz being more official in this episode is fantastic to see. Likewise, there's a moment where Oz punches Xander in this episode, and it's very funny to see as well. It's just a great episode. The last note that I have here, which is outfit related of course, is that Cordelia's outfit is to die for, and whatever you call the kind of neckline for the dress that she had on, please let me know what it's called, because I was like obsessing over that dress and specifically the neckline. After the silliness of the last 2 episodes, we cut right into episode 17 of season 2 titled Passions. This is now our episode where we kind of go back to the main plot of the second half of the season. Passions begins and we see Buffy wake up one morning from her bed with a note. And the note is a drawing of her while she is sleeping, and it was clearly sent by Angelus. It was kind of his next move in their chess game of him saying, I not only want to kill you, but I have every ability to kill and or hurt you or your mother because you've let me into your house previously. So now she's a little bit more on high alert, and quite frankly, how this wasn't already a concern for her is kind of beyond me. She's usually more well prepared than this. We then see Jenny, who once again is kind of being ignored by the Scoobies because of what she's done or lack thereof, but we do see her trying her fucking darndest to reverse the curse. Not necessarily reverse the curse because the curse has already been reversed already, but I guess just find a way to put the curse on him again so that he can get his humanity back again. So she goes to this local magic shop. She gets a hold of this special orb from the magic shop, which the guy basically tells her, you can use this orb, but right now it's basically useless unless you have the ability to translate the old language and this old ancient text. Jenny tells him, don't you worry about it. I'm actually working on a computer software program of some sort that would have the ability to translate this ancient text quite easily in order for her to be able to do the curse again, because I guess whatever curse they put on Angel previously, there's just like no more record of it except for this text that nobody understands anymore, right? Especially now that the uncle is dead as well. He can't even help out in that degree. As the episode continues, likewise, we see Willow also has been visited by Angel. As you'll remember, she let him into her house during the Lie to Me episode when Angel wanted research in order to get more information on Ford, who he didn't trust. So we now have Buffy take the situation a bit more serious. Like, she was already taking it serious, but if it's just her, it's one thing, but if it's Willow as well, it's another thing. So they come up with a way to uninvite the vampires from their house, specifically Angel. Angel doesn't know about this, so he comes one day and starts like kind of harassing Joyce, and at that moment also tells Joyce about the fact that him and Buffy slept together. It's really sad to watch, actually. All of a sudden then, Buffy comes and she closes the door on him, and that's when he realizes that the barrier has been put back up and that now he can't enter her house and he can't enter Willow's house, you know? He played his part, but they beat him there. Later on in the episode, Buffy and Jenny actually have this really sweet moment where Jenny tells her, or not Jenny, where Buffy tells her that even though she doesn't really truly forgive her, she does want Giles to be happy, because you can see that Giles still does want to be with Jenny and everything. So she kind of gives her permission, her blessing, if you will, Buffy does. And we do see Jenny and Giles able to kind of reconciliate a little bit more at the same moment that it seems like Jenny has finally found a way to decipher the text and translate it onto this floppy disk, right? This is very 1998. Instead of Jenny simply telling Giles this piece of information, she instead tells him, meet me at your place tonight and I'll tell you everything. You can probably already see where this is going. Jenny, on her way out of the school, ends up being attacked by Angel. The floppy disk actually ends up falling down onto the ground, but in terms of location placement, it specifically ends up getting like stuck in between these two desks. There's like the desk and then maybe this file cabinet looking thing. It gets stuck in the crevice in between there. So there's literally no way you're going to be able to find that quite easily unless you move that or you drop something on the ground right at that spot. Angel and Jenny have this showdown, and quite obviously Angel is an evil vampire versus Jenny, who is just a mortal at the end of the day. He kills her. We hate to see it. Later, we cut to the next part of the episode, and Giles goes to his house. Music is playing. He believes that Jenny is there at his house. There's champagne on ice and a note that says, come upstairs, basically. And it's written with the same kind of parchment paper that Angel has been sending all of his threatening notes to. So that should have been the first giveaway. But he goes upstairs and he sees Jenny lying dead on his bed. The music amplifies. It's actually a really beautiful, not a beautiful scene, but like this very beautifully tragic scene. Very well done and executed, I think. It really hits the emotions high. The only thing that would have hit the emotions higher overall, I think, is if we had seen more of Jenny throughout the season. I feel like we didn't get enough of her for the impact of this moment to feel as heavy as it could have been. I felt it more for Giles necessarily than I did for Jenny, you know? Everybody finds out the truth about what happened. Giles is very angry and he decides that he is going to go and kill Angel. Buffy comes to the realization that that's probably what he's going to do. He's going to go and do something stupid. He is able to burn up the place where all of them are staying, so now the vampires have to relocate. But Buffy does kind of come and save Giles in that moment from getting into any real danger or trouble himself, and she tells him that she can't do this without him, so never do that again. It's a sad episode in the terms of it ties back to the themes of this season and what I was talking about at the end of Innocence, which is your choices and your consequences. Buffy being unable to kill Angel in that particular moment caused multiple deaths afterwards, 100%, because there was that teenage girl from Phases as well. It also directly hurt Giles because Jenny died as a result in a very heartbreaking way. So her choices are now having consequences. The episode obviously ends with her realizing this and her telling Giles, I now have the ability to do what I need to do, and that's kill him. So episode 18 starts with Buffy having the flu, so she gets hospitalized, and we find out that there is this demon who's going around hurting and killing the children who are sick in the hospital. Apparently it's a demon that only children can see. Adults can't see it. Buffy hypothesizes that it might be this doctor who works at the hospital who is actually doing some science experiments. Not like science experiments, but like he's doing some experiments on the children who are infected in order to see if he can cure them. But Buffy sees this as scary doctor, which who wouldn't? He's scary looking doctor with scary looking needles. However, that doctor actually ends up dying. The demon does kill him, so even though you can't see the demon or whatever, he can still very much kill you. Keep that in mind. We find out that the people who are able to see the demon are actually only people who are infected with the flu, so it's not just necessarily children, although maybe it's just children who are infected by the flu. I don't know if it's ever really clarified. As a result, Buffy actually ends up getting a little bit better health-wise towards the middle of the episode, but then she gets herself sick again in order to defeat it, and she does. She saves the day. It's super fun stuff. The demon's pretty creepy looking if you ask me, so there's that. There are some sweet, tender moments in this episode. Like there are definitely some cute Sandra and Cordelia moments in my opinion, and also just some pretty cool Xander moments, because there is a moment where Angel comes into the hospital and then Xander sticks up to Angel, which is fun to see. He tells him, I really don't think you want to make a scene and try to kill somebody in this hospital full of security guards and policemen and everybody. You know, don't make a fucking scene, you loser. And then we see Xander keeping watch throughout most of the episode, making sure that Angel doesn't come back or anything, and that Buffy is safe. Cordelia stays with him for most of those times, and when he's like falling asleep, she'll get him like a coffee and a donut, and like doesn't say anything, just drops the coffee and the donut there and keeps doing like what she's doing. And it's just this sweet moment, like these sweet tender moments like that just, I don't know, I love characters like moments more than anything. Episode 19, titled I Only Have Eyes for You, was actually not one of my favorites when I first watched Buffy, and it's still not one of my favorites. I don't think it ever will be, but I definitely have a newfound appreciation for it. I don't think it's as boring as I originally thought, and I do like some of the connections back to the theme of the season. It is basically our ghost episode, and ghosts are not necessarily a concept that is new to Buffy, because during the season 1 Out of Mind, Out of Sight episode, it was a theory that it could be a ghost, which we find out it obviously wasn't, but this actually is a ghost episode. Throughout the episode, we see certain pairings, usually a man and a woman, go and reenact this fight scene and this death scene over and over again, and it seems like they're being taken over and possessed by ghosts because they're not acting like themselves. They don't really have any recollection usually after they're being possessed of what's even happened. However, it does result in some death. There is one moment where this teacher and this janitor actually get possessed, and I'm pretty sure the teacher ends up dying. And then, I mean, that poor janitor probably got arrested because he technically shot that teacher while he was being possessed by the ghost. So sucky for that janitor, and just goes to prove my theory that janitors do not last long in this school at all. We find out through some of Buffy's flashbacks, I suppose, and also just some research about what happened in the 1950s in Sunnydale High. We do see that what happened is that apparently there was this teenage boy and a high school teacher who were having an illicit relationship. She called it off even though they were both in love with each other, and then he got so mad that he shot her to death, and then he shot himself. Therefore, throughout this episode, Buffy has like absolutely no sympathy for this male ghost. She's like, well, he's gonna die and I'm going to be happy about it. I'm going to make sure he dies, because she is so hell-bent on not necessarily all men evil, but she's seen it in a very black and white situation, and I think she's putting her own personal feelings with the whole Angel situation into it, and I'll explain what I mean by that by the end of the episode. All while this is happening and while they're finding out the truth and trying to figure out a way to, I don't know, make sure that the ghosts have closure and can move on, weird things are also happening around the school. There's one moment where there's spaghetti being served and the spaghetti ends up becoming snakes, and then there's another moment where bees end up in swarming the entire school. Just very weird stuff. That actually reminds me that I put a note here that in this episode, Principal Snyder makes a comment once again to the police officers, who the police officers are like, a lot of crazy shit is happening, bro. Like, do we need to talk to the mayor about this? And Principal Snyder gets this look on his face as if he were like terrified for a moment, and he's just like, no need to talk to the mayor about it. And this is the first reference we get to the mayor, which definitely kind of proves my theory that I had to myself, that I definitely think that Joss Whedon kind of knew sort of what he wanted to do for season 3 as early as season 2, because there were definitely enough seeds being planted that I definitely think he was thinking ahead. While this is all happening, we also see Spike getting more than fed up with Angel constantly being around, constantly trying to one-up him with Drew, and he's just sick and tired of it. He's jealous. He has a heavy, jealous resentment towards Angel that stems clearly from a long history, and it will not be the end of this jealousy that we see towards Angel and the life that he gets to live, I guess. Angel is also fed up with Buffy. Angel just wants to kill Buffy once and for all. So he decides to go to the school at the same time that Buffy's at the school, and they end up being possessed by the ghost at the same time. What changes here is that I guess maybe the ghosts want to connect to the person they feel that they relate to the most. And so the guy ghost, who Buffy's very anti-guy ghost, he actually connects to Buffy the most. And he puts he possesses her while Angel possesses the teacher, which kind of also makes a bit more sense because in terms of parallels, well, it makes sense for two reasons logistically. In terms of parallels, you know, Angel is the older one in the relationship. He is the one who constantly was like, we can't be doing this for X whatever reason, while Buffy was definitely the younger one, and I guess in this case the teenage boy in the relationship, weirdly enough to say. Likewise, logistically, it just makes sense. The reason that these ghosts have been unable to move on is because when they keep possessing these people to reenact the scene, it's always going to end the same. We saw it with the teacher. The teacher just died, and the janitor went to probably prison, unfortunately, right? If you keep possessing and reenacting the same scenario, you're going to get the same solutions. You're never going to get your closure. But having Angel be the teacher in this scenario is actually perfect because he's still a vampire. So when they reenact the fight and Buffy shoots Angel, Angel just comes right back to life, right? And therefore, finally, these ghosts are able to have their closure with one another and I guess move on to the next life. Buffy then also has a bit more of a newfound, not necessarily appreciation, but understanding for the male ghost in this scenario and the choice he had to go through. It's not necessarily a choice he had to go through because he didn't choose or have to kill anybody, or at least we find out he killed the teacher more so by accident, and then he felt so guilty himself that he killed himself quite literally. That's something that Buffy's going to be able to relate a lot to potentially if the moment comes where she is going to have to kill Angel. The guilt that she's going to feel from it. I think she just gains a new understanding of him and of that whole situation and how difficult it actually must have been, and is finally able to look at the situation less black and white.
Quick editing note to say that I don't know why there are balloons on my screen. Ignore the fucking balloons. But I forgot to mention that in the end of this episode, Spike gets out of his wheelchair and we, the audience, find out that he is truly sick and tired of Angel. He is no longer paralyzed or immobile. Don't even know why he was in the first place for so long. But we are the only ones who know. Angel doesn't see it. Drew doesn't see it. Only we know that the bitch is back.
And with that, we are finally on our final 3 episodes of the season. The last 2 are another 2-parter, so those will obviously be discussed back to back. Season 2, episode 20, we have to discuss first, is called Go Fish. This is the swim team episode because I guess that Sunnydale's football team really isn't that good, but apparently their swim team is really good. So they're making sure that the swim team gets extra accommodations in terms of they can basically do whatever the fuck they want. There is a moment in the beginning of this episode where Buffy spent just the night hanging out with this guy on the swim team. Nothing sexual, just hanging out talking, but all he wanted to talk about was water and ocean and dolphin. So she got bored quickly and she's like, okay, I'm gonna leave now. But then this guy tries to sexually assault her in his car. He's like, no, you're not getting out. She obviously is like, bitch, who the fuck are you? And she slams his head on the wheel, as she should, quite frankly, at the same moment that Principal Snyder is walking by. So now a guy on the swim team has a broken nose. He obviously can't swim. Whatever. Principal Snyder gets very upset with Buffy. The coach gets very upset with Buffy. They all start slut-shaming her. And I'm telling you, it's literally, there are 2 things going on here. One is realistic and one is not realistic at all, to the point where it's a little silly. Athletes getting special treatment and getting to do whatever the fuck they are wanting to do ever is definitely a thing, but this level of sexism is so unreal. It doesn't feel like this has ever happened. I know it obviously happens, but it just seems so over the top, especially with the metaphor going on in this episode, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Slowly though, some of the members of the swim team start dying, and they die in very extreme ways where it seems like all their organs are just exploding out of their body. However, one night during one of these moments, one of these deaths, Xander actually sees this nasty looking, fish looking demon. And so he gets the brilliant idea, I guess, to join the swim team because he believes that whatever the hell is going on with this demon and whatever is going on with the swim team deaths must be connected. So he wants to go join the swim team and find out the truth. Likewise, earlier in the episode, Angel shows up being annoying as usual. And Buffy is actually trying to take care of this one guy on the swim team because she feels like he's going to be next. And he was. He does end up dying, of course. Because Buffy's keeping an eye on him, Angel is trying to mess with Buffy, and so he ends up biting that swim team player. But we find out that that swim team player's blood must have been disgusting, because Angel spits out the blood and like just goes away. He's like, nah, bitch, that ain't even worth it for me. So clearly something's going on with the swim team. Their blood is nasty. Buffy comes up with the idea, well, they must be taking steroids. At the same time that Xander has his theory that something's going on with the swim team. So all eyes are on this team. They think that it's steroids. That's their idea to this point. So Xander ends up asking the boys in the locker room and in the sauna, like, hey, yo, so where is the steroids at? Where the roids at? And they're just like, hee, don't be silly. You're breathing it in right now. Whatever they have been using to enhance their performance is coming from the sauna. It's in the air. So now Xander is freaking the fuck out because he's been in that sauna a few times. To wrap up the story pretty quickly, we end up finding out that the nurse and the swim coach were working in cahoots, at least initially, in order to enhance these players' performances. What they did was not necessarily enhance them with steroids, but I don't know, fucking impregnate them with a fish demon? I don't fucking know. Because every time that they have been exploding to death, what's actually been happening is that the fish demon, fucking merman shape of water creature inside of them has been just like cutting them open to come out. And that's the demon that Xander saw. It was just one of the swim team players, if you think about it. And the coach has been keeping them in this fucking underground sewer of some sort, water pool in the school. I'm not quite sure on the logistics of it there, but he's been keeping them there. The nurse, he ends up betraying the nurse and feeding the nurse to the swim boys, the merfish, because the nurse no longer wants to be a part of all this BS. And he's like, oh, word, boom, have dinner. He also tries to feed Buffy to the fish, but doesn't say that they're hungry. Instead, he quite literally insinuates that these fucking fish are gonna rape Buffy, because he's just like, well, the boys have already had their dinner, but boys have other needs. And I'm just like, what do you mean by that? Are you insinuating rape right now? Like, what is actually happening? Overall, a very weird episode that tries to use high school as an allegory for so many things that it basically ends up saying absolutely nothing. And with that final shot of the fish going back into the ocean, which begs the question logistically, was the sewer water, whatever that they were, the swimming pool they were in, was that connected to the ocean and that's how they ended up there? Or did these fish people walk out of there and then take a car or take a long walk to the ocean? Because Sunnydale doesn't seem to be a coastal town that I know of. Just lots of logistical questions that I don't think I'm supposed to be thinking about. But yeah, just a very weird episode and just further proof that we really just shouldn't even go into the ocean. Finally, we have gotten to the 2-part season finale for season 2. These episodes are so fucking excellent. Let's get right into it. We start with episode 21, Becoming Part 1. We get a bit more of Angel's history. Also, apparently, Angel is either Irish or Scottish. Don't ask me the difference between those two accents, but he is of some European origin. I mean, obviously, but his accent is very much a choice, and it's an interesting one. As promised, we do see some more of his backstory in this season, and this is definitely an episode for that. And also, as promised, we see more of Darla. We find out that Darla is actually the vampire who turned Angel all those years ago, so she is his sire, kind of like how Angel is Spike's sire. We cut to Giles. He's speaking with this friend, this geologist friend. I don't really quite understand things that well. His friend who has this huge block. It seems to be an old artifact. He calls Giles in because he knows that Giles might be able to understand the text on the block or just kind of give more information about it. And with the little bit that Giles does kind of decipher, he realizes he needs to work on translating the text, and that whatever they do, do not open this tomb of sorts. Like, whatever they do, do not open this block, because we don't know what's inside yet, and it's not safe until I can decipher this text. And he's like, word. We also see Buffy is much more set on just killing Angel once and for all in this episode. She's really tired of his bullshit, but she also wants to pass her finals. So it's a very high dilemma situation here. Buffy, in the meantime, is studying with Willow because Willow has been substituting at this point permanently, I guess, for the rest of the year, taking over for Jenny since they were equally both really good with computers. And while they are studying, finally somebody, aka Buffy, finds the floppy disk that was basically hidden for weeks on end that show how to put the curse back on Angel. It's go time. Buffy's like, there actually might be a chance here. Because really all they need to get is the orb and they have the curse now. The vampires then, at that moment, likewise decide that it's time to steal the tomb. So they steal that ancient tomb because they kind of know what's potentially going to be in there as well. The gang ends up having a conversation now that they have found the curse and they know that Angel can be saved, ironically, with those choice of words. But now that they know that that's a possibility, they have a discussion, and for once, I am actually again on Xander's side. Maybe I should stop saying for once, because I'm actually on Xander's side quite a few times. Not always, and we'll discuss that in a few short fucking minutes. But I am in this case, because everyone is basically saying that Angelus, which is what they call Evil Angel, is not the same as Angel, and that getting him back would be a positive. And Xander's like, who fucking cares? Who cares if he's gonna have a soul or not a soul? He killed people. He killed Jenny, quite frankly. And what's to say that this won't ever happen again? For everyone's safety, we should just basically kill him. Like, what are we talking about? Restoring his soul. And again, I'm with Xander on this. There's actually a really great line from Xander that I like, where he says that what happened to Angel wasn't his fault, which is true, but what happened to Miss Calendar was, which is true. Two things can be true. Losing his humanity was not his choice or his fault, but unfortunately, that doesn't really fucking matter when he has also now murdered people that you are close to. Those were choices made by someone who is still Angel. We don't refer to vampires post and pre-soul as different people. At least I don't think we should, and I don't like that we only ever really do it for Angel in this show. I don't like that. Anyways, on a lighter note, Kendra, the vampire slayer, returns, and I love to see it. Woo! Meanwhile, we cut to the vampires and we find out that opening up that tomb will actually cause a portal to open of sorts, of a portal that will basically transport every living creature into hell. Just wacky, girly stuff, right? Kendra ends up giving Buffy this sword, of which it's a sword that was blessed by the knight who originally killed this demon, this, I guess, tomb demon that is going to open this portal. Then we cut back to more flashbacks of Angel's past. Apparently, post getting a soul, Angel was just a full-on fucking wreck. That man was out here eating rats. Just gross, nasty shit. And this guardian angel ends up coming to save him, help him out a bit. And this is where I get a little bit confused, because what he ends up showing him to convert him into, I guess, the angel that we met at the beginning of season 1, he shows him Buffy in LA right before she finds out that she's a slayer and that her entire life is about to change. So, like, you're telling me that the angel that we meet at the end or at the beginning of Buffy, he's like, what, a few months clean? Because before that, he was in a nasty fucking condition. So he just became all suave and shit after like a few short fucking months. Like, this also does kind of prove more my thought process timeline wise of the fact that Buffy's dad was still in her life not that long ago, because Angel also gets put to oversee a moment where Buffy is at home and she has to hear her parents fight with each other, clearly leading up to whatever divorce they're about to have. So this really wasn't that fucking long ago. Okay, so I'm just a little confused on the timeline there, but whatever. Any hoosers, We then see Buffy going to take her final. She's taking her test at the same moment that Angel apparently seems to have brought this vampire out. She basically goes and warns Buffy of the upcoming stuff, takes like this hood that she had off, and then she just burns there because obviously she's literally in direct sunlight, so of course that vampire is gonna burn to death. And quite frankly, I would just hate to go to this high school because I would just feel so unsafe at all times. Buffy decides it's time to go after Angel once and for all. Kendra gives Buffy her lucky steak. She calls it Mr. Pointy, which is so fucking cute that I want to die. At the same time that everyone is in the library, the rest of the Scoobies are in the library with the orb and with the curse text in order to save Angel. Yet lo and behold, this was all a trap, because of course it was a trap. Buffy is fine for the most part. She has her little showdown with Angel, but it was all a ruse so that the vampires could come and attack the ones who were in the library in order to make sure that the curse could not be reinstated. Willow ends up suffering a concussion enough where she's actually hospitalized and she hasn't woken up yet, and Kendra is killed by Drew. I do want to put a pin on that because if you think about it logistically for 5 seconds, Kendra only was a Slayer because Buffy died, which means that I guess in the eyes of nature, Kendra is the current Slayer, which means that now someone else has to become a Slayer. So just a small little pin on that for now. Buffy rushes back in the super slow, like sad slow motion scene. She sees Kendra's dead. She sees her friends are hurt. And then at that exact moment, the cops fucking come out of nowhere and they arrest Buffy because they clearly think that Buffy killed all these kids, right? This then leads us into episode 22. Such a fantastic episode. It's fucking bonkers. So Becoming Part 2, which is episode 22, we start off immediately. Buffy obviously does not get arrested. She fights her way the hell out of there because she is Buffy. And we find out that Willow, like I said, she got hurt pretty bad. She had to get hospitalized. She's currently unconscious. And the doctors do say that the longer it takes for her to wake up, the more difficult it's going to be if she does at all wake up. Buffy goes about her day trying to stay undercover, not get arrested again, and try to see what the next step could be in their plan to defeat Angel. Because at this point, she's come to the realization she's probably going to have to kill him. He destroyed any possibility of them being able to bring his humanity back by hurting Willow, who's the only person who's willing, who has enough magical experience because she's been reading up on it to potentially be able to do this curse spell. Buffy is obviously caught once again by the police, but lo and behold, right at that moment, who comes and helps Buffy from getting arrested from the cops? Dun 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 dun. Spike. Spike comes out of fucking nowhere. Immediately, Buffy is on the defense and ready to beat his ass because that's Spike. But we know that Spike very much hates Angel. And he right now has one thing in common with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that is a hatred for Angel and wanting to kill him. Plus, on top of that, in one of the funniest moments, Spike is like, you know, we vampires, we talk a big talk, but like, I like my life. I want to keep it. I really don't want to be thrown into a portal into hell, personally. So I want to defeat Angel because he doesn't want to die, basically, right? Who really fucking does? Who would want that except for someone literally stupid like Angel? The two of them decide to work together because they really have no other choice. There's tons of cute, sweet little character moments throughout the rest of the episode with Willow and with Oz, with Sandra and with Willow, just really cute ones. As soon as Willow does finally wake up, of course, the first name that she calls for is Oz, and he's right there and he kisses her, and I literally am dead, shaking in my boots. We then cut back to Buffy and Spike, who are working together, and Buffy literally lets Spike into her house, and I'm like, this bitch just never learns. And also, this scene is literally hilarious. Anytime you put Buffy and Spike in a scenario where they don't have to be killing each other and instead they can just be like co-conspirators, which is rare that it happens, but when it does, it's always so funny every single time. In this moment though, when Buffy and Spike are at her house, a vampire attacks and they have to stake him right in front of Joyce. So now Joyce has to find out the truth. There's no other way. And this is one of the rare moments as well where I really have to side with Joyce, and I think she's 100% like not in the right. I would say she's 75% in the right, and I'm going to explain why. Buffy loaded this huge chunk of information on her mother about how she's been sneaking out every night, killing vampires, dating a vampire. A vampire is in her house right fucking now, quite frankly. She's been doing all of this, and she just expects her mother to be like chill about it. Like when her mother starts like asking too many questions or starts acting concerned as a mother would, she's like, Mom, you need to chill out. Like she literally says that, and I'm just like, are you fucking for real right now? Like your mom just found this all out and you expect her to just be like, you know what, honey? You're right. But then comes one of the big moments of the episode. Joyce tells Buffy, I don't want you to get out of here. I'm not letting you leave the house to kill anybody. Like what the fuck are you talking about? And Joyce says, if you leave this house, don't bother coming back. Did Joyce mean that literally? No, of course she didn't. What mother really would mean that? Did she still say it? And did that hurt Buffy? Of course, yes it did. And it's going to be coming back, unfortunately. So Buffy obviously walks away from the house. She has to. Back in the hospital, Willow decides that even though she is still feeling sick, right, from having lost consciousness, she is going to still try to do the spell again. She can do it in the hospital in a controlled environment. If she has the orb, she has the spell. All she asks is that Xander go to Buffy and tell Buffy that she is trying to do this so that in a way Buffy can buy time if she needs to before they're able to save Angel. That's all that Willow needs. However, Xander decides that his opinion should trump other people's free choices and free will. He does not tell Buffy that Willow is working on a way to restore Angel's soul and that she is trying to restore it once again and she's trying the curse. In that moment, he unfortunately takes away Buffy's decision and makes it for her, and it's something that is one of the most divisive moments of the entire show where a lot of people feel a lot of ways about it, and I feel that what he did was wrong. He took away her free will, and as a result, isn't that like part of the whole thing of the season? Your choices and your consequences? I think Xander should have had more consequences for this horrible decision that he made. Something I failed to mention is that throughout this entire episode as well, Giles has been kidnapped by the vampires because of course he has. He's probably one of the only people who's intelligent enough to be able to figure out how to actually open the tomb, right? That's why his artifact friend called him in the first place. He has been very diligent in not giving up that information until Drew pretends, I guess she has a way to pretend to be people. She pretends to be Jenny. He ends up giving the information. We end up finding out that basically in order to open the tomb, all we need is Angel's blood, right? Angel's blood is then going to be connected to this demon portal and it opening up and whatever. During one of these moments, Buffy ends up going back to the school in order to get something. Principal Snyder sees her, and in another big moment, he tells her that she's expelled immediately. I mean, she is quite literally, her mom told her to not come back to the house. She's wanted for potentially killing Kendra. She's, been arrested, and now she's been expelled from the school. So it's just not looking good for our girl. Fully prepared to go and kill Angel, she goes to him with the help of Spike now, because remember, Spike is on her side. Her and Spike end up fighting together to kill some of the vampires, make sure that the portal doesn't open, because that's their main concern as well. They want to kill Angel and make sure the portal does not open. Spike is able to make it out with Drew. He's just like, well, see you later. Buffy then is finally able to have her final showdown with Angel. However, Angel has actually opened the portal just in time, kind of. Like, he started to open it just in time. So the portal's about to open. Buffy and Angel are fighting. But Willow, as I've mentioned, she is doing the curse, and she finally gets to do it. It works. She curses Angel once again. However, because Buffy had no idea that Willow was even doing this in the first place, she really had no idea that she should be able to buy herself a little bit more time and Angel could be saved. So there's this really heartbreaking moment where Angel gets his humanity back and he's like, Buffy? And Buffy realizes that Angel is back. And it's this beautiful moment. They're finally reunited, but the portal's already started to open. And it was opened with Angel's blood, which means the only way that it can close is with Angel's blood. So she takes the sword, she kills Angel, and he then goes into the portal. apparently into hell. Following this, Buffy decides to skip town, right? Because in her eyes, she has no home to go to. She has no school to go to. And quite frankly, she's wanted for potential murder. So she decides to skip town. She doesn't tell anybody. And the season ends with us seeing her taking a bus out of Sunnydale with Angel now dead. This was such a season finale. This was, I think, one of the best season finales the show has ever done, if not maybe the best. I don't know, because they're really good with their season finales. They know how to hook you in and keep you coming back. Okay, so going into season 2 now, we can start with When She Was Bad, which is the season premiere. I would put When She Was Bad as creme de la creme. Personally, I think it's a really strong episode. Definitely one of the strongest in the season. It's really, really good. Some Assembly Required, on the other hand, I would put in average as hell. Not bad, not great, not good either. School Hard, I would put in creme de la creme, I think. I think I would. It's a really good episode. Unlike Inca Mummy Girl, who would probably go, I think, in the skip please. I'll put it in average, just because I like the parallel between the Inca Mummy and Buffy. Reptile Boy, same thing, I feel like is just average as hell, kinda. Yeah, I think that's a good rating for it. Actually, you know what? I kind of want to put Reptile Boy in That Was Cute, I guess. Just because I like a lot of the character elements in that episode. Halloween definitely goes in creme de la creme. Nothing to say there. Lie to Me also goes in That Was Cute, I guess. But like very high on That Was Cute, I guess. The Dark Age might be my only skip please from this season. I can't with that episode. What's My Line Part 1, I'll put in That Was Cute, I guess. And What's My Line Part 2, same thing, That Was Cute, I guess. Ted can go in the average as hell for me, because it had some interesting concepts, but it didn't like do anything crazy with them. It was just kind of creepy, really. Bad Eggs just goes in the boring as hell category. I know some people really want this episode to be like in the skip pleases, but I'm going to be fair to it, I guess. Surprise goes in That Was Cute, I guess. Maybe an unpopular opinion, I don't know. But Innocence, actually, let me put Surprise in creme de la creme. But Innocence is going to be our first God tier. I think Innocence is the best of the two. And like I said, one of the best in the seasons. Phases is That Was Cute, I guess. I really did. I liked it and I love Oz, so that's it. Same thing with Bewitched, Bewildered. Oh my god, I keep saying Bewildered. It's Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. I think that was definitely over here. And then we have Passion. Passion I'm going to put in creme de la creme. I think it should go in God tier, but I just don't feel that strongly about it, so it's going to stick into the creme de la creme. Killed by Death is going to go in average as hell. I Only Have Eyes for You goes in the same category. Go Fish is going to go in the average as hell. And then we're left with Becoming Part 1 and Becoming Part 2. Now, Becoming Part 1, definitely going in creme de la creme. While Becoming Part 2 is going in the God tier. So with this final lineup, you can see that really we're already a step up from last season. Last season had 2 skips versus this season only has 1 skip. Last season had 3 episodes that were boring as hell versus only 1. This season did have more average episodes, but that's also just because this season had more episodes overall. That Was Cute, I guess. There's quite a good mix of both. In the creme de la creme, there were only 2 season 1 episodes versus quite a few season 2 episodes. And then there isn't even a single episode of season 1 that I deem to be God tier in the slightest. So this is our standing as of season 2. Obviously, I'll fill this up again with season 3 episodes when we get to it. And I am going to just go ahead and let everybody know now that season 3 holds a very special place in my heart. So there will definitely be a lot of episodes that are near the very top after the end of this video.